Cheating wife follows friend's deceptive advice to pursue an affair, leading to divorce and betrayal. Two attractive women were dining on the restaurant's terrace, catching the eyes of passing men, but they were engrossed in conversation and paid them no mind. "How long has it been?" Melanie inquired of her tall, dark-haired companion. "Feels like ages since I last saw you." The other woman, a blonde a couple of years younger, replied, "I know, Mel. I've been swamped with grad school and family stuff. Hardly had time for anything else." "How's business school treating you? You must be close to snagging that MBA." "Yeah, almost there. Spring breaks next week, then just a few more weeks till graduation. Thesis is turned in, so no worries there. Plus, looks like I'm skipping all exams. Smooth sailing ahead then." "Fantastic, Mel. Thanks. Got a job lined up yet?" "Nah, thinking of taking a breather after the craziness of the last 2 years. Want to unwind a bit before diving into the workforce. But enough about me. How about you? Any special man in your life?" "Doing okay? Still on the hunt for Mr. Right?" The blonde gave her brunette friend an assessing look. "With your looks, you could have a date every night if you wanted." Melanie smirked. "Trust me, living the single life isn't all it's cracked up to be nowadays. Wading through a sea of idiots just to find one decent guy gets old fast." "I envy you, though. Happily married to a great guy like Adam." "Speaking of whom, how's your dashing husband doing?" "He's all right, I suppose." "Wait, did I just hear a hint of discontent?" "What's up, Mel? Things not all rosy in your world?" The blonde shook her head. "Not exactly trouble, just Adam's been swamped with work lately. Hardly any time for us. And when we do, our entertainment budget's tighter than ever while he dedicates all his time to building his company." "For both of you? And grad school? Well, it's probably not cheap. I get it, and I'm grateful, but sometimes I just miss the carefree fun of school. Everyone talks about parties and bar meetups, and here I am stuck at home watching TV reruns." Her dark-haired friend gave her a knowing look. Any specific person at school you're itching to party with?" Melanie chuckled. "You always see right through me." Leaning in to avoid being overheard, she confessed, "Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really sweet," she blushed, "and he's definitely into me. Whenever we're together, he always compliments how good I look and how well I'm doing in school." Gary shook her head. "I don't think Adam would be thrilled about this. It's just innocent flirting, nothing serious. But you're right, Adam wouldn't approve. That's why I won't tell him." She shifted uncomfortably. "But I can't help but miss the freedom of my single days. It was so exciting meeting different guys, I miss it. Be careful, okay? You got a great husband. Don't risk losing him. Adam won't take kindly to any fooling around, and if he ever found out, plenty of women would be lining up to console him." I know. I want to spend my life with him, start a family. I just wanted a bit of fun before things got too serious." Lowering her voice, she leaned closer again. "Speaking of Carl, he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could guarantee Adam wouldn't find out, I'd consider it." She laughed it off. "But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen." Gary sat down, contemplating Melanie for a moment. Finally, she nodded as if she had a plan. "Don't be so sure. I've got an idea how you could pull it off." Melanie sighed, a mix of disbelief and excitement. "Are you serious? You'd risk your marriage for a fling?" "If I could be certain Adam wouldn't know, maybe." "But you're just teasing me, Gary. There's no way I could get away with it." "Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward." Gary began to outline each step with her fingers. "First, you make a new Gmail account under a fake name like Good Friend. Then you use it to send Adam an anonymous message warning him about his wife's supposed affair." "Wait, do I admit to having an affair? This sounds insane. Why would you do that?" Gary kept her tone even. "More like you'd suggest Melanie's cheating with someone Adam doesn't know and can't easily check." "And what's the point? It'll just make Adam suspicious of me." "Exactly. But when he can't find the mystery guy, he'll have to confront you, demanding answers. But I don't want him to doubt me." "No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you act furious, accusing him of mistrust. You'll be so upset that you'll want to break from the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida?" Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden turn. "Yes, why?" "Oh, I see. You tell Adam angrily that you're going to Florida to sort things out with your mom. Then, while he's here frantically searching for the phantom lover, you're in Florida with Carl having your own little fling. How do I explain this to my mom?" Gary rolled her eyes. "You don't. In fact, you don't even see her while you're there. But what if Adam calls her?" "Tell him not to. Make it clear you need space to sort things out. Warn him not to contact you or your mom while you're away. Tell him if he does, you might not come back." Melanie pondered her friend's plan for a moment, then her face lit up. You know, Gary, I can see this working. But what about when I come back? It's easy. By then, Adam will miss you like crazy, and since he can't find the mystery man, he'll realize it's all a hoax. He'll feel guilty and beg for forgiveness. You'll forgive him, and things will be back to normal. You'll have some fun, and you and Adam will be closer than ever. What about the guy I'm supposed to be seeing? Maybe I should just make up a name for him. You could, but it'll be more believable if he's real. Pick someone totally off limits, like an old guy or someone far away or even deceased. That way, if Adam tries to find him, you're in the clear. Hey, I think I've got it. There was this creepy professor back in my first year of grad school. He must have vanished because I never saw him again. How does that sound? Perfect. Melanie reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. You're amazing, Gary. I'm so pumped. I really think this is going to work. She hugged herself, trembling with anticipation. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam returned to his office, sinking into his worn swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead, anxiety clouding his thoughts. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam pondered a backup plan. His email chimed and he eagerly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But the subject line regarding your wife nearly made him delete the message. Curiosity won, and he opened it. I'm sorry to say, but Melanie's involved with Professor Bellingham. Thought you should know, friend. What in the world? Stunned, Adam read the message again, struggling to believe it. This can't be right. Melanie wouldn't do this. Someone's trying to stir up trouble. But who and why? He almost deleted it, but paused. I can't ignore this. It's probably a mistake, but I have to know. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why make such an accusation? What evidence do you have? He fired off the message, staring at the screen in frustration. This won't get me anywhere. No way to trace this person or when they'll reply. I need to find out about this Bellingham. He scoured the university's site, but found no mention of the professor. Frustrated, he widened his search to other schools nearby, but came up empty-handed. This is maddening, he muttered, feeling powerless. Did my buddy just invent a name? He Googled it, but the results included 2 females, none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's pulling a prank or trying to drive me nuts. Yet he couldn't bring himself to delete the letter. Now that it was sent, doubt gnawed at him. What if she's cheating? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean much. I've been swamped at work, barely spending time with her. Maybe she's upset because I've been neglecting her. I remember turning down her fun ideas sometimes, but dang, I'm putting in nearly hours a week for the business. Doesn't she get it? Can't she see it's for us? And we can't afford extravagance, her tuition's skyrocketing, and I'm pouring money into the business. Yet maybe I neglected her. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar, finding no recent meetups. Damn. But guilt turned to anger. I may not have given Melanie all she wanted, but that doesn't justify cheating. We discussed sacrifices for the business. She agreed then, so she can't complain now. His thoughts were interrupted by the foreman's arrival. Hey Adam, great news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. All right, we need to unpack them and get them to the workshop as soon as possible. After the foreman left, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at least one crisis is avoided, he smirked. Guess I can devote more time to my wife. After more futile internet searching, he leaned back, contemplating. If Mel's really having an affair, it must be someone from the university. Maybe my buddy got the name wrong, or perhaps the university didn't list him. He found the HR phone number. When the secretary answered, he inquired about Professor Bellingham. Which department? I think it's the business school, but not sure. After a pause, she apologized. No Bellingham in the business school. Other departments? Another sigh. Please hold. This time the wait was longer. When she returned, her tone was curt. No Professor Bellingham here. A thought struck him. Maybe he left a year or 2 ago. I can only confirm current staff. University policy, sir. Anything else? No, you tried, he said, holding back sarcasm. He tried the business school dean but got nowhere. By now his head throbbed. Need a drink, he muttered, hanging up. Then he called Gary. Hey, can we meet at Macy's after work? I need advice. No, can't talk about it now. Okay, see you at 6. At Macy's, Adam found Gary at a quiet table with wine and beer. He kissed her on the cheek. Thanks for the beer, and more importantly, for coming. As they sat, Gary studied him. All right, Adam, spill. Business trouble? Unsure where to start, Adam hesitated. Do you know a Professor Bellingham? Gary shook her head. Bellingham. Never heard of him. He sighed and handed her a printout of the email. I got this today, he said. She swiftly perused it, sighed, then read it again. Poor Adam, she said sympathetically. No wonder you didn't want to discuss it over the phone. What are your thoughts? I'm torn, Jerry, he replied. Can't fathom it's true, but can't ignore it either. I spent the day trying to find this elusive Bellingham at the university, but hit a dead end. Now I'm lost. Can't afford a detective, no time for sleuthing. That's why I turned to you. You've been a steadfast friend to Melanie and me. What's your take? She took another sip of wine, then gave his hand a quick squeeze. Essentially, you're asking if I think she's having an affair. I can't provide absolute certainty. On one hand, I haven't noticed anything to suggest she's unfaithful. On the other hand, I haven't seen much of her lately. His annoyance flashed, and she hastened to continue. You're aware that some people thrive on stirring trouble. Or perhaps you have business rivals who seek to distract. There may be other possibilities I haven't considered. What's clear is you can't ignore it and hope it vanishes. I know how strongly you value marital fidelity, and any suggestion of a rift in your marriage will gnaw at you. If left unaddressed, doubt will corrode your relationship with Melanie as effectively as infidelity, she said. I understand your dilemma, Gary, but what's the solution? I believe you should show this to her. She deserves to know she's been accused of infidelity and should have the chance to explain. After all, Adam, if someone accused you, wouldn't you want to know? He sat silently, then nodded. You're right. Keeping this from Melanie will affect our relationship. Ultimately, it could drive us apart as surely as if she had truly betrayed me, he said. He rose and embraced her. Thanks for helping me sort through this, Gary. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean the world to me, Adam, and if there's anything I can do, just say the word. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door as she watched him go. When he arrived home, Melanie was already there, waiting for him. Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call you, but you didn't answer, she questioned. Ignoring her query, he grabbed her hand and guided her to the couch. Sitting next to her, I need to show you something, Mel, something that's really confused me, he explained. As she sat down next to him, she appeared anxious while he handed her the printout. I received this email today. Can you make sense of it? She quickly read it. Then to his shock, she stood up and began shouting, Do you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You hear one accusation from someone anonymous, and suddenly I'm accused of cheating? No, darling, I'm not blaming you for anything. If you're not blaming me, then why did you show me this nonsense? She grabbed the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. You might as well stab me in the heart. This deeply wounds me. You trust someone too scared to even sign their name over me, your wife, she declared, grabbing her bag and heading toward the door. I can't even face you right now. I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll return. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Oh damn, I didn't see this coming. Now things are even worse, he moaned, sinking back into the couch and burying his face in his hands. As he sat there, Adam's initial thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me explain. I didn't accuse her of cheating, I just showed her what someone else claimed, that's all. But he realized the truth before he finished. If Mel had shown me that note, I probably would have lost it too. But what could I do? Pretend everything was okay? Jerry was right, I can't just dismiss the letter. It wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Even though he spent the rest of the night pondering the issue, he was no closer to deciding what to do than when he began. He knew he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide what to say to her. All he knew for certain was that he wanted to bring his wife home, to try to repair the relationship. Emotionally drained, Adam was determined to stay awake until Melanie returned. However, after another hour of waiting, exhaustion overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Sometime past midnight, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. As he stood up, Melanie entered the living room and fixed him with a stern look, hands on her hips. Mel, we really need, she cut him off sharply. I don't want to talk about this now, she said, her tone final. You can spend the night on the couch, and we'll discuss it in the morning. Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched down the hallway to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam shut, he groaned and settled back on the couch, hoping sleep would claim him again. It took a while. Adam usually rose early for work, but he felt compelled to wait until Melanie appeared so they could talk. Brewing coffee, he sat at his laptop, skimming the news. Nearly 8, Melanie entered the kitchen, dragging a suitcase behind her, shocking Adam. Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were. She raised her hand, cutting him off. It's a shock, Adam. This shakes our whole marriage. I need time alone to process. Spring break starts tomorrow, and I'm going to Florida to visit my mom. I'll be gone all week, returning next Monday for classes. During my absence, I don't want to hear from you. No calls to me or my mom. Got it? He nodded, feeling helpless. I'm serious, Adam. If you try to reach out, I might not come back. Understood. Another nod. Okay, she said and left, dragging her suitcase to her car. Stunned, Adam sat for minutes before dragging himself to shave and change, then drove to work with a heavy heart. Upon arriving, good news awaited him. His foreman efficiently distributed the missing components, and testing proceeded without issue. At least the business won't crash today, Adam muttered bitterly to himself. Unlike my marriage. In the afternoon, while working on a spreadsheet, he received a call from Gary. I was worried and wanted to know how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie? Oh well, it's a long, sad story, he said, feeling dejected. Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Maybe we can get together to discuss this again over a drink. That would be great, Gary. Same place? Okay. Before leaving, he checked his email again, but there was still nothing from good friend. At the bar, Gary saw the dark circles under Adam's eyes right away. Adam, looks like you didn't sleep much last night. What happened? Taking a big sip from his beer, Adam talked about the fight with Melanie and her leaving the next day. Gary looked at him with sadness and guilt. Oh, Adam, I feel awful. You listened to me and it turned out all wrong. No, Gary. I thought about it a lot, and I believe it was the only choice. I didn't expect Mel to react so strongly, but I couldn't hide the letter and act like nothing happened. Now I hope she'll calm down and we can talk when she's back. You say that nicely, Adam, but I still feel bad. So what's your plan for the week? I'm not sure, Gary. If Mel and I don't talk, I don't see how we can move forward. Maybe I'll wait a bit and then call her. No, Adam, that's the last thing you should do. She already feels like you don't trust her. If you call after she told you not to, it'll prove her right. Yeah, I get it, but I feel so useless. I don't know how to find out who sent the letter while she's away. I'll keep trying to find this Professor Bellingham. That sounds smart. Maybe he can help fill in some gaps. Over the next days, Adam kept trying to solve the letter mystery. Despite no luck, he was sure Bellingham had ties to the university. Then he had an idea. Maybe I can't find him because he's an alum, not a teacher. I'm an alum too, so maybe the alumni office can help. When Adam called and said he was a former student, he got transferred to the development department quickly. The person he talked to wrote down Adam's info and asked if he wanted to give money to the school. Adam said no. He was looking for Professor Bellingham, thinking he might be a former student. The person checked but couldn't find anyone by that name in their records. Adam suggested maybe Bellingham didn't finish school, but the person couldn't help since their records only had graduates. Adam hung up frustrated, thinking he just guaranteed he'd be asked for money later. The next day, Adam went to the business school during spring break to look for Bellingham. Even though it was break, he asked around but eventually got asked to leave by the assistant dean. Back at his office, feeling defeated, Adam wondered what to do next. Then his phone rang. It was Dr. Avery Mayfair from the business school faculty, who heard him earlier and wanted to help. Mayfair said Bellingham used to teach part-time there, but his class got canceled because not many students enrolled. Adam thanked him. There's more, Dr. Mayfair continued. At the start of this year, Bellingham told me he got a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. Really? Adam asked, surprised. Yes, the professor confirmed. And there's something else. In the same message, he said he recently married his partner, Harold. Harold. So Bellingham. Exactly, Dr. Mayfair said. Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfair, Adam said gratefully. I still don't get why someone sent me that nasty letter, but now I know it was a lie. Can I ask why you called me? I'm grateful, but we don't know each other, the professor asked. I don't mind telling you, he continued, his tone changing. Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else, so I understand how you feel. Thankfully, this time it was just a false alarm, but if it were true, I'd have told you. Thanks, sir. I really appreciate what you did. That night, Adam called Gary to share the news. I still don't know who's trying to mess up my marriage, but I'm sure now Mel isn't with Professor Bellingham. Can you trust Dr. Mayfair? Gary asked. Definitely. I checked him out after our call. He's on the business school faculty. He seems respected and older, maybe around 60. I also looked up Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He's there too. That's good news, Adam. You must feel relieved. Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to tell Mel when she comes back. It's simple, Adam. From what you said about your argument with her, she didn't give you a chance to explain. When she returns, tell her you never doubted her. Say you knew about Bellingham and found him as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted strongly, you couldn't tell her. If you handle it right, she'll apologize to you. I'm not sure, Jerry. Things weren't exactly like that, Adam said uncertainly. Gary heard a smile in his voice. Come on, Adam. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a bit to get what you want? Before leaving town on Sunday, Melanie called Gary. "Hey, I just wanted to check on Adam before I come home. I'm nervous about what I'll find." "You owe me big for helping you while you were wrapped up in your affair. With some luck and my help, you'll reconcile with Adam, and your marriage will be better," Gary assured her. Melanie told him about her week, ending with Adam finding Bellingham. "If you handle it right, Adam will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will be normal again." There was silence. "What if I don't want things to go back to normal?" Gary was confused. "What do you mean?" "Just last week you had an epiphany. Carl, the guy you're with, makes you laugh, and he's great in bed. You haven't felt this happy in years. You want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Come on, Gary, you have to help me figure out a way to make this work." "Hold on, Melanie. You're already taking a big risk by going off with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're really pushing your luck, girl." "Maybe, but you've got to admit your little scheme worked like a charm. I bet you can come up with a plan for me to do it again." "Come on, Jerry, please. This guy's really something." "I was afraid something like this might happen." There was a prolonged silence. "Okay," Jerry said slowly. "I can come up with a plan to get what you want, but you need to understand you're putting your marriage to Adam at risk. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's dedicated, faithful, and a real family man. Men like him don't come around every day. Are you sure you want to gamble it all for a bit of excitement in the bedroom?" Melanie chuckled. "You get me going with, 'I can.' Come up with a plan." "Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up?" "Of course. You told me to keep it active." "Good, because you need to send another letter from your supposed good friend, but this time send it to yourself, to your regular email." "Okay, but what should the new letter say?" "It's the same as the last one, but this time you'll write that Adam is having an affair with me." "What? But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does this help?" "It's simple. The first letter accused you of infidelity. Adam found out you couldn't have cheated with Professor Bellingham, but he might still have doubts about your fidelity." "Wait, Gary, didn't you say a letter about Bellingham would give me leeway with Carl?" "That's right, but after he gets the second letter, he won't have doubts. He already knows you weren't involved with Bellingham, and he's sure he's not having an affair with me. Clearly, the so-called good friend is a liar. So Adam won't doubt you anymore. This means you can get away with almost anything without raising Adam's suspicions." There was silence on the line. Melanie then exclaimed, "Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with this, but you just gave me a pass I can use for the rest of the semester." "There are two more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter." "Okay, but why?" "Because then I can reinforce that you're trustworthy and this mystery friend isn't." "Ah, got it. He respects your opinion, so he'll listen to your advice. What else?" "After you send the message to yourself, remember to log out of your good friend email account. What if Adam stumbles upon it?" "Oh no, actually you should probably sign out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl, right? I've warned Carl never to email me, but that's still smart advice. Better safe than sorry." Returning home from work that evening, Adam was alarmed to find Melanie in tears. "What's wrong, Mel? What happened?" he asked, rushing to her. "Oh, Adam, it's happening again," she said, tears in her eyes, handing him a copy of the letter. "Damn it," he swore after reading the accusatory message. "You know that's not true, right?" "Of course I know. You'd never cheat on me, just as I'd never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Gary. She's such a good friend to both of us that she'd never do anything like that. Damn it, someone's still trying to stir up trouble for us, and I have no idea who or why. There must be a way to trace these things." She looked up at him hesitantly. "Are you going to tell Gary about this? Do you think I should?" "I believe you should. Whether you like it or not, she's now involved. It wouldn't be fair to her if you didn't inform her about this." The next morning, when Adam called, Gary answered cheerfully. "Well, how are the lovebirds today?" Adam's tone was serious. "We're okay, Jerry, but there's something new I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work?" "I actually plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over?" "Sure." "Great. I'll stop by between 6:30 and 7. When Adam arrived at her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed his solemn expression. "What's wrong, Adam? I've been worried since you called." He shook his head. "I'm really sorry, Gary, but it seems you're now involved in this situation with Melanie and me." Confused, she looked at him. He handed her a copy of the latest letter. After reading it, she looked at Adam in despair. "But this is absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that." He nodded. "She does. In fact, she said the same thing to me." Gary shook her head, puzzled. "That's a relief to hear. But what do you think all this means?" "I think someone is determined to cause trouble between Melanie and me." First a warning about the professor, now this. The only explanation I can think of is that I have an enemy, perhaps a business rival, but I have no idea who it could be. Anyway, since you're now involved, Mel and I decided you should be informed. I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so considerate, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. Unless this mystery person does something obvious or slips up, involving the police might not help. I agree, Jerry, but it's frustrating. I'm tired of all this confusion, and I just want whoever it is to leave us alone. How is Melanie taking this? She's very upset. She was in tears when I got home. I'm not surprised, especially after the first ordeal. Look, Adam, I think Melanie is pretty fragile right now with all of this and nearing graduation. She's probably on edge. You need to take care of her as much as possible. Do you think we should block all emails from this account? That might be a mistake. If they send anything else, you'll want to know. You're right, but how can I protect Mel? Well, if you receive another letter, I wouldn't tell her immediately, if at all. You could monitor her email on your laptop whenever possible. If another letter comes, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way you won't have to involve her. Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. He stood up. I'm truly sorry you got pulled into all of this. But if this is meant to be an apology, then I don't need one. You mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever I can to assist. He smiled appreciatively. I should head home now to check on Melanie. Starting to leave, he paused, embraced Gary, and planted a kiss on her cheek. Thank you for being such a great friend. Your support throughout all of this means a great deal to me. Upon returning home, Adam was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in much higher spirits. The following morning, she seemed even more cheerful and rose early to have breakfast with her husband. It's a rare treat to see you before I head off to work, Adam remarked. Well, I wanted to make sure I said I love you before you left this morning, she explained, planting a kiss on him. Oh, and by the way, she continued, I wanted to mention that I'll be attending a lecture on campus this evening. A few girlfriends and I are planning to grab a bite afterwards, so I might be home late. Sure thing, Mel. Everything's all right here. We've got plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can snack on those. Thanks, honey. If we miss each other, I'll probably swing by after class to drop off my things and change clothes. Have a great evening. Aware that Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam decided to stay at the office later than usual. Business was looking up, with a potential large client expressing interest in their new product samples. Things are starting to make sense now. I just need to get to the bottom of who's behind these email games with Mel and me, he pondered. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious good friend. As he walked into the house, heading toward the bedroom, he saw Melanie's laptop on the table. She probably didn't need it for the lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Gary's suggestion. I wonder if she still checks her email. If she does, then we need to see if she's received anything new from this idiot. He opened the laptop and saw that the email page wasn't open. Clicking on the Gmail link, a window popped up, asking him to choose an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out. So he started to close Gmail, but before he could, he noticed a second account named Good Friend. Shocked, he stared at it. Trying to open it, Google asked for a password. Without it, he closed the tab and slumped into his chair, trying to understand what he had found. Why does she have an email with that name? Gmail doesn't allow duplicate addresses, so Melanie must have sent those letters. But why? Why would she accuse herself of an affair? Then it hit him. It was a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor while she was with someone else. Another thought came to him. Her trip to Florida. When I confronted her, she acted mad, saying she needed space and was visiting her mother. But did she really? Quickly, he called his mother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked, Melanie and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon? Not at all. It's been ages since I saw you. Please come whenever, she said sweetly. Gritting his teeth, he replied, Great, we'll be in touch. After hanging up, he cursed quietly. Melanie is so deceitful. Where did she go? And who was she with? Damn her. Then he recollected the last letter, the same one Melanie had received. What was the purpose of this? Damn it, it must be another distraction while she goes to lectures with her friends. What a despicable, lying woman. Curiosity gnawed at him, prompting him to investigate what she wore when she went out. He hurried to the bedroom and sifted through his wife's underwear. Despite struggling to remember every detail about Melanie, he almost gave up, but a sudden suspicion gripped him, leading him to double-check one particular item, a garter belt. It was missing. Frustrated, he searched for a suitable bra and underwear, only to find them gone as well. Out for dinner with her friends, huh? He replaced everything and returned to the kitchen table. So be it. You enjoy sabotage and deception? Well, two can play at this game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was angry but pretended to sleep as she entered the bedroom. He held back from confronting her when he heard the shower, sarcastically thinking, who knew lectures would be so sweaty? The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work before Melanie woke. He left a note by the coffee pot. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. I had an early meeting at work and might be late today, so don't wait up. Adam had a busy day, but not with work meetings. He did errands at lunch and came home with some purchases to get ready. Then he had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Later, he went out for dinner and a movie. Melanie was asleep when he got back to bed, trying not to disturb her. But when she woke up, Adam was waiting. I thought you left for work already, she said, taking the coffee he gave her. I wanted to see you before I leave. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's rare. When will you be back? Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if things go well. Can you manage while I'm gone? She smiled. I'll be fine. I'll keep busy. Good. Just stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face fell. That's not funny, Adam. Sorry, you're right, it's not. He waved and left for the car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. She's probably making plans to meet her lover. I just need a diversion to keep her here. Instead of going to the airport at lunchtime, Adam left his office and made his way to the off-campus parking lot of the university. He briskly walked toward the Graduate School of Business, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder. Without attracting attention, he headed to the reading room of the business school library. The few students present paid him no mind as he casually strolled behind the periodicals rack. Once out of sight, he produced a string of hefty firecrackers, lit the extra-long fuse, and tossed them into a metal disposal container. He casually strolled to the nearest door, using his backpack to prop it open, then exited. Outside, he retrieved the phone. He'd bought the previous day and dialed campus security. Quick, come over, there's firing at the business school, he exclaimed when they answered. I think there might be multiple shooters. It's ongoing. Pointing the phone towards the library, he triggered a series of fireworks seconds later. After disconnecting, he hurried across campus to his car amid blaring sirens and frantic people scattering in all directions. From his neighborhood vantage point, he watched an hour later as his wife's car pulled into their driveway, followed by another vehicle with a male figure stepping out. In times of danger, there's no place like home, Adam muttered with a bittersweet grin before driving to the motel where he'd booked a room. Later that night, he circled his neighborhood to ensure the second car remained parked in his driveway, then returned to his room to attempt sleep. The next morning, when the adulterous pair exited the house, they were shocked to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. Oh God, Carl, that's my husband, Melanie gasped upon recognizing him. I thought you were in Detroit, she stammered, then caught herself. Dear, things aren't as they seem. Carl just stopped by for a visit. Melanie, every time you speak, it's just lies. I don't want to hear it anymore, he growled. This isn't a one-time slip-up. You've been seeing him for weeks and it wasn't accidental. You planned it all. I know you sent that letter as a distraction, so you could spend spring break together, wherever you went. And by the way, your mom's wondering why you haven't visited. I guess you were too preoccupied with this garbage, he gestured at the sullen man, to bother seeing her. Turning to Melanie's lover, he swiftly snapped several pictures with his phone. When the man realized, he snarled, clenched his fists, and took a threatening step forward. Easy now, Adam warned, raising a hand, causing the man to back off. Adam turned to Melanie with a smirk. Seems your boyfriend's more lover than fighter. His tone hardened. Grab your things from the house and leave. Don't be here when I return, Mel. I meant it when I said I never want to see you again. Adam, please, she pleaded, collapsing onto the driveway in tears. He paid her no mind and headed to his car while she sat on the driveway, her hands covering her face as she wept. En route to his office, Adam made a stop at a dumpster, disposing of his phone and the toy weapon tucked in his pocket. Glad these things look so real, he grinned coldly. Back at his desk, Adam emailed one of the photos he had taken. Surprisingly, he received a call shortly after. This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just send me a photo? Dr. Mayfair, forgive the intrusion again, but do you know the man in the photo? His name might be Carl. Is the woman beside him your wife? My ex-wife, to be precise. Lovely woman. I recall her being in one of my classes. Last year. As for the man, I recognize him. He's Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students. Carl Mannheim, good to know, doctor. I have some business to attend to with Mr. Mannheim. So he's the serpent in your Garden of Eden? In a manner of speaking. But my Eve wasn't exactly innocent. Ah, I see, quite intriguing. Well, I'm glad to have assisted you, though I'm sorry it's not the outcome you desired. Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and help, regardless of the outcome. Good luck to you, my boy, and keep your spirits up. Things have a way of working out, speaking from experience. 2 months later, Adam sat with his lawyer, feeling irked. Any word from Mel's lawyer? How's the divorce proceeding? Yes, I spoke with Hannah Montrose yesterday and she sent a counteroffer to Melanie today. The good news is, Mel's agreed not to contest the divorce. After hearing the recordings you made, Hannah persuaded her not to risk them in court. But the bad news is, now that Melanie's accepted the marriage is over, she's keen on getting as much financial compensation as possible. Damn, she deceives me, gets caught, and then expects me to pay up. It's unfair. What's my cheating wife after? Typically, we'd see a request for dividing assets, but there's little to divide here. You rent, no pension, and minimal savings. Your only asset is your business share, which is running at a loss. Seems she's banking on it failing, so she's only asking for alimony. I appreciate her vote of confidence, Adam snapped sarcastically. So, how much alimony is she seeking? Considerably more than our offer. The lawyer handed him the document and Adam gasped. This is absurd. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to pay that much monthly, I'm essentially bankrupting my business to satisfy her. Melanie won't negotiate, so Hannah will suggest it to Judge Abernathy. I won't hand over that much without a fight. We'll take our chances in court. Understood, Adam, but remember, Judge Abernathy holds all the power. You're at his mercy. About a month later, Adam sat anxiously in court. After arguments from both sides, Judge Abernathy adjourned. Any thoughts on how it's going? Adam whispered to his lawyer. Hard to say. It could swing either way, or the judge might suggest a compromise. They stood as Judge Abernathy returned, then sat again as he called the opposing counsels to the bench. I assume your positions remain unchanged? The judge stated. The lawyers exchanged looks. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Before I decide, I'd like to question Mrs. Weatherby. Hannah Montrose looked tense but motioned for Melanie to approach. Stay calm, she whispered, and remember, address him as Your Honor. Adam's lawyer leaned in. Usually it's not good when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched sourly as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified, noting the judge's attention on her. I think we're in trouble, he murmured to his lawyer. The judge reviewed papers, then turned to Melanie. Mrs. Weatherby, it seems the primary dispute is the alimony amount. Your offer is substantially higher than Mr. Weatherby's, correct? Yes, Your Honor. How do you justify your proposed amount? We're asking for more considering my years of marriage and the need to start anew, Your Honor. However, Mr. Weatherby claims his sole income is from his struggling business. Why do you believe Mr. Weatherby can afford your proposed support? We argue he's artificially deflating his income by investing in his business. Adjustments could easily cover the support I seek. The judge remarked, examining the financial statement. It shows negative cash flow, Your Honor. Adam's accountants can manipulate numbers to yield any desired result. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie turned pale and shook her head firmly. Noticing this, Melanie swiftly corrected herself. No, Your Honor, not at all. Earnings can be deferred and investments accelerated, all within accepted accounting principles. He simply invests heavily in his company. Adam's blood pressure spiked. He whispered angrily, What a manipulative move. She knows it's untrue. She's just trying to pressure me into giving her what she wants, regardless of the truth. Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy reviewed the case summary. Until now, we focused on your husband's business investments, Mrs. Weatherby. However, Mr. Weatherby has also invested significantly in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, Adam did pay for my tuition, but I worked diligently, completed all coursework, work exams, and wrote my dissertation. I've dedicated myself for the past 2 years, including summers. And you recently graduated? Yes, sir, with honors, she proudly confirmed. He nodded. Very well, Mrs. Weatherby, that's all. You may be seated. Returning to her lawyer, Melanie hugged her in relief as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at both parties. After reviewing all evidence, I'll grant Mrs. Weatherby the full financial support requested, the judge announced. Adam winced, and Melanie hugged her lawyer in joy. But the judge wasn't finished. This settlement provides for a comfortable living without employment for Mrs. Weatherby, despite her recent completion of a degree that should qualify her for a lucrative position. To incentivize the use of her education, I'm awarding alimony for 6 months only. 6 months? That's unfair, Melanie protested. I can, and I have, the judge replied, striking the gavel. Next case. Her lawyer swiftly escorted Melanie away, though she continued to protest until a bailiff intervened. Do I only have to pay alimony for 6 months? I can manage that, Adam remarked to his lawyer as they left the courtroom. Pretty good outcome, his lawyer agreed. I thought we were in trouble when the judge favored her, but he wasn't impressed with her tactics. Not many husbands fare so well in divorce court. Wonder what swayed him in my favor. You don't think her pleading no contest to the infidelity charge played a role? He shouldn't have considered it when deciding the financial settlement. Adam glanced back to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. Well, whatever it is, I'm satisfied with the outcome. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder, and Adam turned to see an elderly man, vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. Adam firmly shook his hand. Professor, it's a pleasant surprise to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brought you to court today? The elderly man smiled. After our talk, I became curious about your case, so I decided to drop by and see how things turned out. His smile widened. It also gave me the chance to speak with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy. He shook Adam's hand again. I'm glad things worked out for you. If I can help in the future, I'd be glad to. He winked. Us divorced husbands need to stick together. As the professor left, Adam watched him go. Interesting, he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Gary in the crowd, but she vanished when he looked. It took a while before she dialed a familiar number on her phone, and when it was answered, she hesitantly said, Hello, Jerry. It's me, Melanie. Melanie, what a surprise. Haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you? To be honest, it's been tough. That's why I called. I needed someone to talk to. Sure, tell me how you're doing. Are you working? That's part of the problem. I thought my MBA would land me a job, but employers here value experience more. Most offers I got were internships. Wow, that sounds tough. So where are you now? When alimony ended, I was desperate. Tried admin work, but it was terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. That's why I called. I can help analyze your finances if you're interested. Many overlook this. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd like to assist you, but my finances are stable right now and I'm pretty confident about the future. I don't think I need help. I understand. No worries, Jerry. I hear that often, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's tough to break into this industry. In fact, I had to move back in with my mom to cut costs. Are you living with her now? What about you and Carl? Don't mention him. We split shortly after moving here. You broke up. What happened? It was awful. Carl dropped out of school, his thesis got rejected, and he refused to work. He became bitter and aggressive, so I had to involve the police. That sounds rough, Melanie, but now you're free. You can go out, meet new people, and have fun. Remember how much you missed that when you were married? Melanie sighed. But outings require money, Jerry, and I aren't well off right now. And going out isn't as glamorous or exciting as I thought. Actually, there are more creeps than good guys. Changing the subject, Melanie asked, How about you, Jerry? Anyone special? My life's taking a turn. I'm getting married next month. Married? That's incredible. Who's the lucky guy? You know him. It's Adam. Adam, are you engaged to my Adam? You can't do this. I already did. We'll have a small ceremony at our new home, then head to Paris for our honeymoon. New house? Honeymoon in Paris. Can Adam afford all that? Not only has my situation changed, but Adam's has too. The same month you moved to Florida, he landed a big order he'd been working on. After that, his business took off. His new product is in high demand in the auto industry. And there's more. Earlier this year, a large manufacturer made him an offer to buy his business for a fortune. He agreed, and the deal's closing next week. So you see, our financial future is secure. Melanie could barely speak, but Gary persisted, her tone now altered. You know, Melanie, all of this could have been yours if you were content with what you had. I warned you from the start about the risks of your affair, and I cautioned you that there would be other women ready to step in if your marriage crumbled. But you were the one who encouraged me. You even came up with the plan. Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose in shock. Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You orchestrated everything from the beginning. I just shared an innocent fantasy with you, and you manipulated me into acting on it. You deceived me into thinking I could get away with an affair. Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't make you do anything against your will. I merely provided you with the opportunity. And no, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. I simply set things up so they'd unfold as I wanted. I trusted you, Gary. I thought you were my friend. Gary chuckled. You know what they say, all's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Adam knows what you did. You're a schemer. I'm sorry, Melanie, but I have plans with Adam tonight. I'll block your number after we hang up. You're despicable. Meanwhile, Jerry welcomed her fiancé home with a kiss. Adam mentioned receiving a letter from Melanie. Really? Jerry replied casually. I almost forgot about her. What'd she want? Adam glanced at Jerry neutrally. She claims you orchestrated everything to break us up. Pretty wild, huh? Jerry took a look at the letter and smirked. Poor Melanie. She could have made her little jealousy act more convincing if she signed it good friend. It took him a while to stop laughing.
Caught wife cheating, divorced her, she attacked my new partner with a car, and I made her regret it. I'm a 36-year-old male, and I was married to my ex-wife Cassandra, who is 35, for 6 years. We had an alright marriage. I mean, for the most part, I can't say it was perfect or anything, but it wasn't horrible. We had met on Facebook, and something sparked up between us there. Things were pretty great during the dating phase, and I was very cautious, looking out for red flags because I grew up with a mother who was very abusive towards my father. And I didn't want to find myself heading towards anything close to similar. I didn't see any warning signs, though, so we eventually got married, and things were fine. Unfortunately, about 2 years into the marriage, we started having big fights about once every month. Quite frankly, it started to get exhausting, but I was doing my best to make things work because, why not? We had a good start to our relationship, so I really felt that it was possible for us to figure out what was wrong and sort it out. I suggested couples therapy more than once, but after one session, she refused to go again. I personally think she wasn't happy with the fact that the therapist didn't exactly seem to be on her side. It became evident that she had a temper, though, and it hadn't been there before. It was part of what we were going to explore, but we never had more than one session. My own assumption was that it was related to the loss of her father, but I couldn't be certain about that. She would never break things or hurt anyone, though. It was just a lot of loudness. Anyway, we eventually hit a groove of just coexisting with each other. There were still quite a few good times, but it definitely wasn't the kind of strong, exciting relationship that we used to have. There was no doubt that I was still in love with her, though I recognized that if things didn't change in the next few years, we'd likely be heading toward divorce. I wanted to give it a try, though, because I never saw marriage as something that you should just walk into and walk out of, obviously excluding abuse, infidelity, and other major deal breakers. I think that's enough background, though. I'm not the highest-ranking employee in existence where I work. I'd say I'm painfully mid-level. However, I often have to travel to other states for work, and what I'm about to talk about was one of those times. I went for an expo, and while it was a 4-day thing, the company representatives there were called back after 3 days because there was a work emergency that needed more hands on deck. As the good little boy I was at my job, I rushed back. The only thing was that I didn't tell my wife I was coming back. Most of the reason was because I wanted to surprise her. Things had gotten to a point where I felt like I had to force the spark back into things because we were just coasting and not even trying to be spontaneous. The day I got back, I bought the flowers that I knew she liked and went home. Obviously, I had my key, so I let myself in. I knew she was supposed to be at home that day, so when I didn't see her in the living room or in the kitchen, I went straight to the bedroom and opened the door. Right there, I saw a man on top of Cassandra doing what you know he was. I could hear her making sounds, and unfortunately for me, the entire image is something that has refused to wash away from my mind. The change in lighting as I opened the door made them aware I was there, and they both jerked up in shock. I stood in the doorway as both of these people rushed to wear their clothes. The man put on his underwear, grabbed the rest of his clothes, and tried to push through me in the doorway to the room. I don't know if he knew she was married. I don't know if he was a regular partner of hers, but in that moment, I found myself with one hand on his throat. I wasn't trying to strangle him, but I was gripping tight. I slapped him twice. Even up until now, I can't understand why that was the way I chose to hit him, but that's what came out of me. He looked shocked, and then he looked like he wanted to fight back, but I let go of his neck, and he left. By that point, I turned back to Cassandra, who was struggling to put her bra back on. I was infuriated, and I just stood there, flowers at my feet, just looking at her as she said nothing and dressed back up. She was avoiding looking at me, and I genuinely didn't even know what to do in that moment. As she struggled to straighten her hair, she said the stupidest thing to me. "Why are you even back?" In that moment right there, I felt like doing what I had just done to her affair partner. I wanted to hit her so badly. For some reason, I just couldn't move though, so I stood there like a fool. She didn't meet my eyes, and she said, "You weren't supposed to be back," under her breath. I still didn't say anything, and she seemed to lose it at that point. "You weren't supposed to be back. It's your fault for not telling me that you were coming back, or you would never have seen this. I asked you for an open relationship, and you said no. I have needs. I tried to do things without hurting you, but you just had to come back unannounced. Why?" At that point, I walked across the room, grabbed her by the collar of the shirt she had just put on, and raised a fist to hit her. She looked frightened, and I'm not sure if I would have stopped if she didn't look that way, but I stopped regardless. I'm not proud of that moment. Even out of context, it's not something I look back at with pride, though part of me rather darkly wishes I had struck her just for the satisfaction of it. As I let go of her and walked out, I could hear her yapping behind me. "You were going to hit me? Really? This is why I don't freaking love you anymore. You call yourself a man, but you're not. You make me sick, and so much more." At that moment, I didn't understand why you'd say those kinds of things to someone who almost just hit you, but later on, it seemed like she was just trying to aggravate me and actually get me to hit her. That way she could send me to jail or something. I just walked out of the house, though. I couldn't deal with it and what I might have actually done to her because the situation made me feel like I was inches from snapping. Her smell was in the bedroom and in the house. I found a friend's place to crash at, and he was extremely sympathetic to everything that I had gone through. He recommended that I divorce her as soon as I could, and while I wasn't eager to do that because lawyers are expensive and I earned a lot more than she did, I was wary of alimony in her favor. He said that I could potentially get a smaller alimony payment if I had proof of her infidelity. I knew divorce was the answer. So I don't think my hesitation was because I was thinking of working things out with her. I'm not that idiotic. I think that Cassandra sort of snapped in that moment because she started sending me text messages telling me how I had a small penis, how his was bigger, how he was better, and all that type of stuff. I think she was very stupidly enraged that I caught her, and she didn't have a rational emotional response to it. She blamed me for ruining the good thing that she had with her affair partner, and this was how she decided to resolve her emotions. For some reason, my friend was there and told me to screenshot the messages as she sent them, which I did, and right there was such a good call from him. About a minute after her rant, I watched all the messages on send. I don't know whether she had a brief moment of lucidity, but she clearly had second thoughts. After that, she just sent messages cursing me out, and those ones had no mention of her infidelity. My pal made several drinks for me through the night until I fell asleep. About 2 weeks later, I finally found a divorce lawyer that was in my pay grade and who I felt very confident with. I presented what I had, and he said that we'd be able to do something strong with it. I felt good about it, though he didn't seem too confident that I'd be let off without needing to pay anything. He assured me that he was going to try his best, though. She was served with papers and took about a full month to respond to them. I think that was an intentional choice because it was clear as day at that point that neither of us wanted to be in this marriage with one another. The divorce proceedings started, and Cassandra was being an absolute butt through them. She was trying to make things harder than they needed to be at every opportunity that she had. At that point, we had been separated for several months, so it didn't make any sense. She was just trying to frustrate me, and it was working. It was during this time that I was already trying to get over her. I'll admit that I started with a bunch of one-night stands, but at a point, I knew they weren't for me. Part of the reason that I never agreed to an open relationship with her. I've never been anything else but a one-woman type of man. I used to read a lot before life and work kind of took that pastime away from me, but I was trying to find peace in things that didn't come in a bottle. So I found myself at a bookstore at some point during the whole divorce debacle. I was looking for some fiction to read, but I had been out of it for so long that I didn't know where to start. There was a lady there in the same section as me, so I asked her what she'd recommend if I was looking to read science fiction. She asked me what I liked, I told her, and the next thing you know, we were there talking at length about books and our favorite series and all that. I think we stood there for about 30 minutes before I picked out a book based on her recommendation and got her number. I'm smiling thinking about it because my interaction with her was like a salve to everything I had been going through. We started going out soon after that, and I was very open with her that I was going through a divorce, but that didn't really seem to faze her in any way. She said that she was glad I was upfront about it and that it didn't matter much to her. She was distracting me from the pain in my life at that point, but I was glad that I didn't seek her out as a distraction. We met naturally, and she turned out to be such an amazing person. The divorce was dragging on, and I genuinely wanted to be done with it, but Cassandra clearly didn't. At a point, I and the lady I met back at the bookstore, let's say her name is Emily, had been dating for 5 months, and yet I was still dealing with the divorce. It was at this point that things went crazy, though. Emily and I had a nice day in town, and we were walking toward her car in the parking lot of a shopping mall. At this point, everything happened so fast. I heard a car's engine rev suddenly, and a vehicle came right towards us, though more towards Emily. I tried to pull her out of the way by yanking her arm, but she was stuck in her outstretched leg when I pulled her. I can't imagine the way it felt when I heard her scream in pain, and I saw that her leg was broken above the ankle. I was about to call on my phone, but the car had hit another one really hard and was reversing. It faced Emily and me where we were on the floor, and I actually had to drag her between the cars before the vehicle drove forward and hit some other cars. By this point, people's attention was drawn to the scene, and they were coming closer. It was at that point that someone got out of the driver's side of the car, and I saw it was Cassandra. In that moment, it probably made the most sense, apart from it being a psychopath. But at the same time, I was so shocked because there was no way to say that she hadn't just literally tried to kill us. Or at least kill Emily. She moved toward us threateningly, but a bystander restrained her. To be 100% honest, I felt like she had lost her mind. I couldn't imagine that level of hatred and madness from her, to the extent of trying to run over Emily. I couldn't explain it away, despite how much I hated her. The police came soon after, along with an ambulance, and they took Emily to the hospital. Cassandra was arrested, and as she was being arrested, she screamed in my general direction, "It hasn't been a year, and you're already walking around with a..." It was scary, but it was also incredibly confusing because it seemed like she actually felt she had gotten the short end of the stick when I caught her cheating and divorced her for it. She was acting like a victim, as if I hadn't literally walked in on her sleeping with a man. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Emily could have died that day. She made a full recovery, spoiler alert, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. When I told her that it was my soon-to-be ex-wife, I was sure that things were over. Who would want to live the rest of their life with some crazy woman trying to kill them? But all she said was that as long as she was in prison, there wouldn't be anything to be scared of. And of course, prosecutors decided to pursue the case, especially because the parking lot had several cameras that recorded the entire thing. Apparently, she had driven past us once, and I think it was there that she had identified us. She then circled back and attempted to hit Emily. She clearly made the decision and didn't question it at any point. At that point, our divorce proceedings essentially came to a halt because of her entire criminal case. Being a major fixture in a serious court case isn't fun, in case you thought jury duty was as bad as it could get. It went on for quite some time, to be honest, and it messed around with my work, which I really didn't like. She wasn't worth all this stress. It was a walk in the park for the prosecutors, though. There were eyewitness accounts, CCTV footage, and I and Emily both testified as to what happened. There were quite a few charges, but she was found guilty on every single one, of which the worst was attempted murder. There was no question that she was trying to use the car to kill someone, especially with the second attempt to drive into us. In the end, 12 years in prison. Honestly, I was shocked that it wasn't longer, but the claim was that she showed remorse for her actions. I still feel it was an act, and that she had no criminal history whatsoever. She also had the chance to get out early if she was a good girl in prison. I wanted more time, but 12 years in prison was not a little time for someone in their mid-30s. And she still had to attend her divorce proceedings remotely, though on some occasions her lawyer represented her entirely. At that point, things actually started to move the way that they should have from the start. And with the last piece of the puzzle that she had beautifully served to us by attempting to kill my girlfriend, she got nothing. As in, absolutely nothing. The judge refused to even remotely reward such behavior with anything that wasn't hers from the start. The smile it put on my face was huge because, at that moment, it was as if everything had just come together, despite all the pain she had caused. Cassandra has been out of my life, and it feels like she's gone for good, even though I know she'll come out one day. But it makes life so much easier to live, to be 100% honest. I moved out of the old apartment because it reminded me of her cheating, but Emily and I got a place, and we've been incredibly happy together. Emily herself jokes that she was happy to be the sacrifice to help me put my ex away. I don't know what I could have done differently. Maybe left her when I realized she had a temper, but apart from that, I don't know. All I can say is to avoid crazy women, even when they weren't crazy from the start. I'm glad I'm better off in the end, and that's what counts. I'll be looking forward to reading your comments and seeing your jokes. That's part of what makes me love this community. Finding your wife in bed with someone else. Ouch. That's the stuff of nightmares. And then the whole open relationship request after being caught? Talk about adding insult to injury. Talk about your marriage taking a turn from, for better or worse, straight into attempted vehicular homicide territory. Who knew till death do us part could get so literal? Imagine trying to explain this to your friends over a pint. Yeah, so my ex-wife tried to run over my new girlfriend in a mall parking lot. Turns out till death and our vows might have been taken too seriously. And let's not forget the courtroom drama. Shake my head. Attempted murder wasn't exactly on the divorce checklist, was it? Got any crazy ex stories? Share them with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today.
I'm 43, and my wife, aged 40, and I've been married for 16 years. We have a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Our marriage had a challenging start, but we got through those tough years and emerged stronger. We married young, lacking some maturity, but our love helped us conquer any challenges. I'm not entirely sure if this was wishful thinking. My wife has been a manager at a large advertising company for 3 years, and I've been an engineer for 7 years. Both our jobs pay well, providing a comfortable lifestyle for our family. We are a close-knit family, always making time for our kids to create cherished memories. Despite being a good dad and husband, I was shocked to discover my wife's long-term affair, despite some mistakes I made. Now, on to the discovery. My wife became distant, especially in the last 2 challenging years. She constantly compared me to her boss, who seemed to handle things better. I couldn't read her mind, unlike her boss. I didn't take the initiative to plan dates and make her feel special, something her boss did for his wife. I asked her what she wanted to spice up our love life, but her response was vague. I needed to already know and do it. Feeling clueless, I researched and bought books, but my attempts were met with disappointment. Unbeknownst to me, it wasn't me who was fixing things all along. We were close to her boss and his family, spending time together at barbecues, family outings, and other activities. I confided in her boss about our marital problems, thinking he was a good person. Back to the discovery, I grew emotionally tired from my wife's demands to improve our marriage. One night, she laughed and giggled while texting someone, and when I tried to peek, she angrily pulled away. Suspecting an affair, I made the mistake of asking her directly the next day, but she vehemently denied any wrongdoing. Unable to access her phone initially, I later obtained it and discovered deleted texts. Although some conversations seemed inconsistent, I gathered bits and pieces of proof, confirming the affair with her boss. Instead of confronting her immediately, I waited, feeling devastated and concerned about the kids. Despite the pain, I didn't want to give up on the marriage. So, 3 days later, I purchased How to Help Your Spouse Heal from an Affair with the hope of saving our relationship. Planning to talk on a Saturday, she claimed an emergency at work, which seemed suspicious. Unable to confirm, she returned home late on Sunday, avoiding questions about her delay. I suffered, but she seemed indifferent. Desperate for stability, I contacted her boss's wife, who was as shocked as me. We decided to gather evidence on each side and compare. I snooped on my wife, and she did the same with her husband, easily finding undeniable proof. Her husband's arrogance left the texts on his phone intact, making sense of the little texts I found earlier. We discovered the affair had been ongoing for 2 years, and both of us were furious. Although revenge was tempting, we decided against it. They had slept together in various places, even exchanging pictures. Ignoring the images to avoid scarring ourselves, we sought revenge without engaging in our own affairs. We both drew up divorce papers around the same time, determined to move on from the betrayal. Our spouses were unaware that we knew, so we played our roles. When everything was set, they resumed their affair. This time, we collaborated with the boss's wife, knowing exactly where and how to confront them, even the hotel they booked for their weekend getaway. I personally went there with the sheriff, waiting in the lobby while my wife was called down from a room, dressed in a bathrobe. Despite the distance from our home, it wasn't too far. The sheriff asked for her confirmation, and she was served after confusedly affirming her name. It was satisfying to see the shock on her face, but I walked away without rubbing it in. She grabbed my arm, demanding to know the meaning. I told her about the affair and I'm leaving. Simple. She screamed, pulled my arm, and the sheriff had to intervene, telling her to release me. She started crying, but I left quickly to get home. My wife informed her boss, and he panicked, being served at home. We didn't give them time to recover. We blindsided them, just like they did to us. My divorce will be finalized in a couple of months, while hers might take a bit longer. Both my wife and her boss are fighting the divorces, neither wanting to end their marriages. The excuses I hear are that they never intended to leave their spouses. It was a purely clean affair, nothing more. People have worse affairs, and still come out with a great marriage. They messed up and would like a chance to fix the situation. I asked my wife about the outcome, and she said she was going with the flow, acting completely out of character. I called her an idiot. People around me criticize me for not giving my wife another chance. My kids know what's going on, age appropriate, and they support me, but wish we could stay together. My resolve is slipping, especially since we still live in the same house, and my wife is going to therapy and reading the book I brought. She says she's remorseful and will do whatever it takes. All I tell her is that she's sorry she got caught, and that's all I need to know. She called me a bitter, resentful person who can't look past all the negativity. She apologized later, but I know that's how she feels. The boss's wife and I still talk, which my wife hates. She thinks I might have a revenge affair, or her boss's wife is the reason I won't give us another chance. She has asked me repeatedly to initiate no contact with her boss's wife, just like she did with her boss. I told her she's crazy, we didn't do anything wrong, and why should I respect her opinions now? See, I think I'm done. I have no respect for her. She still doesn't want to give up, and is actively trying to engage with me about her thoughts and processes to her affair. I see them as excuses, so I don't entertain her. She wants me to do therapy with her. I've read many places where the therapist blames the sufferer, so I said hell no. She wants me to read infidelity books with her. What's the point if we're going to divorce anyway? She wants to be with me. I told her she's not going to manipulate me with closeness. She says it's not manipulation, just showing how much she loves me. I corrected and said love me now. People around me, even my mom, are frustrated, saying people make mistakes, and my wife realizes through her mistakes that she truly does love me. I tell them I won't be anyone's fallback plan. I feel bad for treating her the way I do, but I still love her even though there's hate. Am I being unnecessarily cruel to her? She's trying hard, but I just don't care. Should I reconsider the divorce? People are saying I'm moving too quickly and might regret it. Is that true? I don't know what's real. Update. Thanks for your concern, guys. My wife and I are in a sort of good place, but we're not reconciling. I'm still divorcing her because her affair was too long for me to get over. If it had been a one-night stand, that would be a different story. But no, 2 years is just a slap in the face. I've gone to a few therapy sessions with her because I'm not a monster and still love her. One session was very good and made me understand her remorse. She hasn't handled the fallout perfectly, but she's been trying pretty damn hard. The second session was a mess of her being upset with me for continuously contacting the boss's wife and her being afraid of a revenge affair. It was the angriest I ever was through this whole mess, and we argued a great deal later because I refused to do what she wanted, which is no contact with the boss's wife. That was resolved when I promised her that there will be no revenge affair. I know I don't owe her anything, but she's still my wife until our divorce, and I still want to hold true to my commitments. I've attended more sessions with her to check on her progress. Yes, this therapist handles both individual and marriage counseling. No, I'm not attending these sessions because I secretly want to save our marriage. I just want to witness my wife's progress and be involved if needed. After the divorce, I'll step away gracefully. The boss's wife is still leaving her husband, and he's still resisting the divorce. She's as determined as I am, and I'll admit we confide in each other during low days. I still don't see any affair. We're just on friendly terms. She's a strong, independent woman who doesn't tolerate nonsense. My kids are doing well. They understand that divorcing doesn't mean we love them any less. They don't want a divorce, but they understand why it's necessary for us in an age-appropriate way. My wife no longer works at the advertising company. She resigned after I served her. She's strictly no contact with her former boss. According to her, she sought help on forums to save the marriage. I've been reading a lot here, and initially, I didn't get why people stayed with adulterers, but after seeing my wife work hard to be a better person, I can see the temptation. She's not a monster, she's just flawed and made horrible choices, learning to be better. She's offered everything for another chance, but I'm not sure. As the divorce nears, I feel more at peace. We recently discussed her asking for a chance after the divorce. She's offered a postnup. I wasn't completely opposed, but it would be a very, very long road for her. To be honest, a huge part of me wants this divorce for a fleeting sense of justice, the only justice I can get without becoming an adulterer. My mom and I reconciled after I revealed more about my wife's affair, But now she's furious after learning the details. Navigating her anger is challenging. Regarding a revenge affair, I didn't want to write here until my divorce was finalized, but I'm just angry today and need to vent. As many of you know, my wife is scared crazy about a revenge affair. The simple reason is because I'm still in contact and see the other woman she betrayed. My wife is very insecure compared to the other betrayed spouse. Is that how it's spelled? The other betrayed spouse is younger, a model, very attractive, and owns a successful business. It makes my wife paranoid that I will give in to temptation and cheat on her as revenge. I still can't believe the nerve of her to give me the two wrongs don't make a right speech. Of course, she isn't wrong, and I don't intend to ever follow through, but her hypocrisy infuriates me. Every time I visit the other betrayed spouse, my wife gets extremely sad or clingy. I don't know how many times she has thrown herself at me just to make sure I don't cheat on her back. I reject her attempts, and it only makes things worse. It absolutely floors me that cheaters are this selfish, only thinking about themselves and their pain, while the betrayed have to trudge along and try to pick up the pieces. Another thing, our kids still see their kids. I never go to the other betrayed spouse without my kids. But no, my wife still thinks I have it in me to be as heartless as she was and take any opportunity to be with another woman. Laughable. Ohm is still living in their holiday home, begging the other betrayed spouse to take him back. I won't lie, it brings me a sense of great satisfaction to see him suffer the consequences. He hasn't tried to threaten me because of how much leverage I have on him. He is allowed to visit his kids anytime he wants but doesn't want to see me, so he makes sure I'm not around and then visits. I pity the guy, honestly. Currently, my wife has been extremely apologetic. She's been showing me a lot of affection, but I've been ignoring it because I'm not in a good place. We have a therapy session today, and I plan to express all the pain and hurt I've endured because of her. The rage I feel is becoming overwhelming. Update. During a recent therapy session with my wife, she asked for more time to win me back. She had several reasons why I should at least try to participate in recovering our marriage, not necessarily reconciling. I kept pointing out that she's only trying now because of the fallout from her affair. If she was still with the other person, she wouldn't be making an effort. She emotionally mistreated me for months, and I won't let myself be walked all over, even by the woman I loved. She acknowledged her wrongdoings and apologized again, making many promises to make it up to me. She wants our marriage to become stronger than ever and believes it's possible. I asked if she was willing to deal with my rage because I have a lot of it. She said absolutely, encouraging me to unload on her whenever I needed to process the pain. Usually, when I ask her why she had an affair, I get a million excuses. This time, she was straightforward, admitting there was no excuse for what she did. She vowed to show through her actions every day for the rest of her life that she's truly remorseful and would never hurt me that way again. She opened up about her feelings, revealing she was very insecure and jealous of the other betrayed spouse. The affair boosted her ego, making her feel beautiful and desired. She admitted it was a fantasy that would never last, regretting it deeply. She acknowledged the guilt she'd carry for the rest of her life and said she'd probably never forgive herself. She confessed she could never compare to the other betrayed spouse, and her certainty that I would cheat back stemmed from the other person's beauty and integrity. The other betrayed spouse never said a mean thing or threatened her. It was all my wife's insecurities talking. The therapist asked what it would take for me to consider my wife's proposal. I couldn't think of anything and honestly said I needed a time machine because what I have now is a sham of a marriage. I never signed up for this. The therapist suggested that all marriages face problems and how they're dealt with shows the strength of a marriage. I was taken aback and told the therapist to focus on my wife, not us. The therapist suggested my unwillingness to listen to logical reasoning might be a communication problem. I didn't disagree. On the drive home, my wife and I had a long talk. She asked if I felt emasculated due to her affair, surprising me with the question. I answered yes. She then shocked me by asking if I would feel better if I slept with another woman. I reiterated that I'm not normal and wouldn't have a revenge affair. She clarified she meant a trial separation where I could go out and regain my confidence. She'd remain faithful and wait for me to come back when I'm ready. I thought her proposal was crazy, asking how it would benefit the marriage for both of us to have affairs. She argued that mine wouldn't be an affair because we'd be separated with conditions allowing me to see other people. I rejected the idea, finding it out of character for her to propose that. Despite not trusting her, she has been surprisingly calm and patient these few weeks, almost like a different person from the insecure one. Even though she doesn't want it, she has been generous in the divorce, making the situation difficult to navigate. Update. Before I dive into it, I want to thank those who've been supporting me. Right now, my wife and I decided to be civil and spend the holidays together for our kids. This will be our last holiday, though my wife hopes otherwise. I'm doing it for our kids because I love them. Our divorce will be final in mid-February. For those curious, we've split everything 50-50. Though my wife has been generous, I'm unsure if it's a tactic for later nastiness. So far, she's been nice, confessing it's because I've been a great husband and father, so I should get a fair divorce. She won't lose much in the divorce, but I'll get slightly more, thanks to her. I stopped therapy with her. It gave false hope. She admits a desire for closeness due to my absence, understanding I felt emasculated due to her affair. She's been frequently trying to engage me in closeness, which is new since my wife hardly initiated closeness before. Over time, I appreciated her addressing my hang-up, but I reject her attempts. She insists it's not about reconciliation. She just wants me to feel good and desired. I've cut off contact with the other betrayed spouse temporarily due to things getting too personal. The other betrayed spouse confessed interest, willing to wait until my divorce is finalized before anything. I'm confused and unsure about returning her feelings, so we decided to take a break until everything is sorted out. Despite someone suggesting my presence affects her reconciliation, I have nothing to do with her decision to leave Ohm. She's done with him, and we don't talk badly about our spouses when together. Ohm recently apologized in person, but I didn't accept it. Call me petty, but I don't care about what he's going through. I have a question. Is it okay to have closeness with my wife, even if we're not reconciling? I miss the closeness, and my wife is eager, trying everything possible to initiate it. Sometimes, I find it hard to resist. She even got rid of anything related to Ohm without me asking, as I didn't care to know where they had closeness. It's not easy for me to switch off these feelings. Is this a trap? Am I being played? Before someone suggests kicking her out, I've tried that, but I want her here for less hassle until the divorce is done. Rant. It's finally dawned on me. I thought I wasted years on a seemingly worthless woman, but she gave me great kids and memories. I won't forget that, but I now understand I can do better than her. I've received advice and finally understand I deserve better. She treated me poorly when another man showed her attention, investing her energy in him. Only now, when I'm over her, does she try everything to keep me and invest in us. Now she wants me to be happy, even being adventurous in bed. While our previous closeness wasn't perfect, I liked it. I realize I've missed out on a lot through her texts with Ohm, knowing just the tip of the iceberg and how graphic their encounters were. Now she values my boundaries, sees me as the king she should have before, but it feels fleeting. She's transparent and brutally honest, expressing regret for the affair. I see her constant look of shame and hopelessness when I'm unreceptive, making me hate myself sometimes, but it's necessary. Why can't I see this as a positive thing? Why can't I judge her for her remorseful actions? Many people have long-term affairs and come out stronger, right? Why am I basing decisions on emotion and not mature objectivity? Someone else might get the improved version of her while I navigate another uncertain relationship. Why not fight for this when everything seems to point to something good in the future? I've been given these lines and have one answer. I won't accept disrespect. Maybe I was willing to in the early stages, but I woke up from that quickly. This is for the people who pumped me and regularly asked about my situation. I'm going to enjoy this Christmas with my entire family and then move on from my wife. I decided to stop listening to the nonsense I created in my head to keep my wife's control over me and move on entirely from the idea of her. I won't be dating her or giving us another chance. We are over for good. I like to say my wife isn't a villain, and that's true. I want her to be happy, but it will never be with me. She has shown me that. I called the other betrayed spouse today and offered her dinner after the holidays for her support when I hit rock bottom. She said she would love to. I know this doesn't happen often, but we really supported each other throughout all of this, and I owe her thanks. Before people start talking about how much I planned this with the other betrayed spouse, I honestly did not. My emotions have been so screwed up these few years that the very thought of another woman never crossed my mind. And it's dinner, nothing else, unless we both want it. But the closer divorce gets, the more I realize I actually have options. And one option has been right there. What about Ohm? I don't give a flying FK about the dude. I do not think I will marry again, and I will tell this to any woman. Although my divorce hasn't been much of a hassle, I am losing a lot of money. Still, the whole idea of marriage just seems like a sham to me now. Sorry for being so cynical right now. I don't want this post to offend anyone, but I'm still jaded. I gave my best years to this woman, and I'm starting to realize how little I got back. Update. Officially divorced. It's been a long time coming. It's over. My ex and I have officially separated for good. It happened almost 3 weeks ago, and for a few days after, I grieved like I lost a loved one. It hit me extremely hard that my marriage failed so spectacularly. I never cried that hard, ever since I discovered the affair in the first place. I raged a lot too, definitely one of my lowest points. Everything has been organized for my ex, partially for the kids' sake. She moved out of the house and I'm looking to buy her out of her part of it. She lives in an apartment now, a big downgrade for her which depresses her. She is still going to therapy, still invested in reading and studying infidelity. I don't know exactly why. We've had long talks leading to and after the divorce, minimal physical contact. I know I shouldn't entertain her now, but she's still the mother of my kids, and I want us to be good co-parents. I'm nothing if not logical about the situation, largely thanks to this community and others. Of course, it's the same tune. She wants to reconcile, and I think it's too risky for me to put myself in that situation again. Unfortunately, I'm not in the mood to give her that gift. This past weekend, I accompanied the other betrayed spouse to dinner with no intention other than enjoying each other's company and chatting. We talked about all sorts of things. Things got flirty between us, and I must admit, I was very reluctant to entertain the rapidly changing mood. Well, I guess I should say the night ended in a very passionate way. Sorry for TMI. It was probably the most perfect closeness I've ever had. OBS is very much a giver and spades above my ex. I did not intend for it to go that far, but the other betrayed spouse and I were willing, and I was as well. I learned quite a few more tricks in the sack. It's the first time I ever had someone that enthusiastic to please me, and not the other way around. Guess I shouldn't call her the other betrayed spouse anymore, as she divorced her ex. But for privacy's sake, I'll just use that. I do not think we will take our relationship further. To be honest, I think the hormones and wine got the best of us that night. She would like to, but I am undecided. I need to sort myself out emotionally, and I think she does as well. I feel very good though. People might not like hearing this, but the closeness I had with the other betrayed spouse really helped a lot with my residual self-esteem issues. I felt desired, alive, and finally understood what I was missing out on. I will never settle for robotic closeness again. What was more satisfying was knowing that I was not cheating and did not lower my morals. All things considered, I'm very proud of how I handled all this crap. I wasn't perfect, but did the best I could. I'm probably coming out very lucky compared to many BHS, even if I did lose a substantial amount of money in this process. But it was because I was willing to absorb advice and listen to people with experience instead of going in blind and hoping for the best. Takeaways. Respect yourself. Never tolerate disrespect, even from those closest to you. Everyone deserves a healthy and fulfilling relationship. Don't settle for less from your partner. A committed relationship should have a satisfying closeness life. If your partner isn't putting in effort, especially if they did so before or during an affair, don't accept it. Express your dissatisfaction. If your partner doesn't meet your needs, don't settle for unexciting closeness unless you both agree. It's okay to walk away. Communicate, communicate, communicate. It's incredibly important. If you're betrayed, only you can truly heal yourself. It took me a long time to grasp this. There are more points, but that's all I can think of now. I'll answer comments for a few hours, but after that, I'm done posting here and moving on with my life. Have a good one, everyone. Update. I intentionally avoided anything related to infidelity because I still get triggered now and then. I'm dealing with the trauma and trying to move on without dwelling too much on it. I'm okay. No accidents or disappearing acts. I'm still an IC other betrayed spouse with my girlfriend. She resolved her case with Ohm regarding child custody and finances maturely instead of seeking revenge. There's some tension among the children, and we've started therapy to help them adjust and understand that our relationship doesn't diminish their importance. It's challenging because not everyone is on board. My daughter X and Ohm don't like being around each other, and there's tension. My ex wants a second chance, probably upset that the other betrayed spouse is influencing my perspective. I'm genuinely concerned about her behavior. She tried something at a 4th of July party, and though I stopped it, she's persisting. People warned me she might pine for me, and they were right. The other betrayed spouse is letting me handle it, but is also growing weary of my ex. Did I mention my ex strongly dislikes the other betrayed spouse? I thought my ex was changing for the better, but since I left her, she's been a train wreck. It's puzzling. I treated her well and she treated me poorly. But the moment I said, "Forget you," she's desperate for my attention. I don't know if I should be angry about it. Well, there you have it. Y'all can rest easy now. I'm concerned about my daughter. Hello, everyone. I've been searching for helpful resources to navigate my current situation. Check my history for more details, but I'll provide a summary. My ex-wife had a 2-year affair, during which she was emotionally abusive and frequently compared me to her affair partner, Ohm. Our closeness suffered, and initially, I blamed myself. When I discovered the affair, I eventually decided to divorce her, especially after a weekend when she lied about spending time with Ohm. I connected with the other betrayed spouse, and together we initiated divorces while ensuring our children were informed in an age-appropriate manner. We've been open with the kids, explaining the separation without details. Despite their understandable reluctance, they handled it as well as could be expected. My ex-wife pushed for reconciliation, but I chose to end the relationship, forgiving her but moving forward. The divorce was financially costly, but not excessively damaging. Soon after the divorce, the other betrayed spouse and I developed a serious relationship, having initially been friends with benefits. Supporting each other post-affair fallout was crucial, and without it, I might have remained with my cheating ex or worse. I regularly talk to my kids, ensuring open communication. My son, aged 10, likes the other betrayed spouse, while my 15-year-old daughter is taking more time to adjust. She wants me to be happy, but is cautious about interfering in my relationship. We've discussed healthy relationships and her concerns, and she seems supportive, although she needs time. Our relationship is discreet to avoid overwhelming all the kids, including her 2 daughters. Everyone, including Ohm, is in therapy. Now, concerning my daughter, the fallout from the affair strained her relationship with her mother. She openly expresses hatred because she believes none of this would have happened if not for her mother's actions. She acts rebelliously toward her mother, rejecting affection and even cursing at her. I've stepped in to enforce respect, but it worries me. The ex-wife is trying to mend their relationship, seeking my assistance despite it being my decision to divorce. I could throw her infidelity in her face, but I choose not to. However, it raises doubts about how I handled the situation. Things I'm worried about. Daughter lacks respect for her mother. Daughter wishes for things to go back to before. She's unaware of her mother's misuse toward me. Daughter is in therapy, but I'm unsure of its effectiveness. Concerns that she feels voiceless and overwhelmed. Handling my relationship well, but possibly hiding emotions. Fear of having negatively impacted my kids' lives by divorcing their mother. Any advice is highly appreciated. Update. I want to share a realistic update, not a fairy tale. Let's address the big question. How are the other betrayed spouse and I doing? Honestly, we're doing fantastic. If I had known a woman like her existed earlier, I would have found her years ago. Jokes aside, our relationship is the strongest I've ever had. Because my ex-wife put me through so much, I didn't really know what a healthy relationship looked like. I still doubted myself, but the other betrayed spouse has been an amazing partner, helping me through this. I'm genuinely in love with her. She consistently shows me how much I mean to her, and I feel the same way. However, we're keeping it at the girlfriend level, and I'm still unsure about the whole idea of marriage. We're keeping our relationship private and involving the children as little as possible, although they know we're dating. Now, about the kids, it was a bit rough at first. Who am I kidding? But they're getting along really well now. Our heavy involvement in their lives and ensuring they had someone to talk to when they had problems helped. Also, there's been a lot of therapy. My daughter and son adore the other betrayed spouse. She has a great connection with kids, and her children like me much more than they did almost 2 years ago. Her youngest even started telling people that I'm her stepdad at functions and outings I took her to, which was a surprise. I was concerned she might feel pressured to see me that way, but she assured me she liked me a lot, and I make her mom happy, so she's happy. I'm her stepdad. Hearing that hit me emotionally, though I put up a strong front. I enjoy seeing my kids happily playing with the others, even though they've formed a united front to playfully tease my son, the only boy and the youngest of the bunch. I'm not sure if I should laugh or cringe at that one. So, how about my cheating ex-wife? We are on good terms. She's been working hard to repair her relationship with our daughter, and I was pleased when my daughter said she could find it in her heart to forgive her mother for what she did. They've been through a lot and have made progress together. Despite that, I don't think my ex-wife has fully accepted that we're done as a couple. She seems to be looking for or hinting at a second try. She's been hitting the gym and attending individual therapy. Overall, she seems much healthier now, but I don't really care. I've made peace with the past, and it's her problem for not doing the same. She talks more with the other betrayed spouse, and that's reciprocated. However, the other betrayed spouse regards her with skepticism, which is understandable given everything that's happened. Ohm is a lost cause. I didn't realize what a mess the guy would be despite all his money. He has a girlfriend now, but his kids despise her and are very open about it. It took me some time to see how full of himself the dude was. To be honest, I don't like his girlfriend either. She comes off as extremely materialistic, selfish, and callous toward the girls. In conclusion, we're doing better than okay. Don't get me wrong, I had doubts about whether this was the right path, but with a lot of effort from everyone involved, it's turning out splendidly. No happily ever after, just genuinely happy now.
Looking back, it's strange how everything fell apart. For years, I thought our life was solid, built on routine and respect. Sure, we had our disagreements, but nothing ever seemed serious enough to shake our marriage. It wasn't until recently that I realized I had been ignoring the deeper issues. What seemed like small frustrations had grown into real cracks, and I hadn't even noticed. Then came the phone call that shattered my sense of certainty. Marcy's voice was calm but final. I wanted to argue, but I stood frozen. It hit me. I'd been blind to changes I didn't know how to fix. I heard her voice, but it felt distant. My mind shut down and I couldn't respond. Everything around me blurred, and I was left in a strange stillness. "Gosh," I muttered. "What's wrong?" Leslie asked, breaking through my fog. I could only think that the marriage I had worked so hard to keep was slipping away. The phone call was bad enough, but now, reading her letter made it feel final. I couldn't even recognize the person who had written it. Was this really the woman I married? "What does it say? Please tell me," Leslie urged. I couldn't process it. I must have misread. I needed to look at the letter again, hoping I'd find something to change it all. "Rick, are you okay? What's happening?" "In the Army, you're trained to bounce back quickly from trauma. On missions, I always managed to take control after chaos. I was in shock after reading Marcy's letter, but I didn't take long before I snapped into problem-solving mode. Rick was stunned, but my brain took over. First priority, send Leslie home without upsetting her. This wasn't her fault. It was between me and Marcy. "Rick, Leslie started. "Leslie, listen, thanks for coming tonight, but the letter blew up my life. Have you read it?" I asked, hesitating. "No, I'd never do that," she said, a bit hurt. "Okay, thanks for the company, but I need some time. Can we reschedule?" She looked surprised, but sad, not angry. "All right, Rick, you won't do anything stupid, right?" she asked, taking the Moscato from me. "Don't worry, and if I need anything, I won't hesitate to knock on your door," I said with a smile. I must have seemed calm enough because she smiled back before walking away. But my mind was on something else. Priority number 2, deal with my grief alone. I called the office and left a message that I'd be out for the rest of the week. Family issue, email only. My secretary would understand and not ask questions. Priority number 3, numb the pain. I downed my glass of Moscato and Leslie's too. Then I saw the letter again. In anger, I swiped it off the table. Leslie was gone, the logistics handled, but my peace was shattered. Grabbing a bottle of Jack Daniels, I sank into my chair. Forget the glass. Forget manners. I raised the bottle. Here's to you, I muttered. Go ahead. Sleep with your doctor, you idiot. I took a couple sips of Jack Daniels, but it tasted bitter in my mouth. I was furious, pretending to play soldier. Right. I spent hours cursing my wife, downing the whiskey, until I passed out. When I finally woke up, the sun was high, 12:20. I hadn't slept that long since I was a teenager. The bottle of Jack was empty on the floor, and I knew I'd downed most of it last night. Getting out of that chair was tough, both because I'd slept in it for 14 hours, and because at 48, my back's not what it used to be. My head and stomach were in complete agreement with my back. Jack had been a friend last night, but now I needed medicine. I stepped out onto the deck for coffee and felt relieved that the thick hedge between my yard and the Nielsen's meant no small talk with nosy neighbors. They knew too much and would ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I briefly considered locking the gate, but I didn't want to send the wrong signal. I wasn't mad at them. I was mad at my wife. When my stomach signaled it was time to eat, I made breakfast and went back outside. All I could think about was sneaking into Bogota, catching her and her doctor in their hotel room, and making them pay. He's playing soldier. You want to see how a real soldier plays, huh? Saving lives isn't a game. Does she think it is? I barely kept myself from screaming. How could she compare my brief, accidental moment with Deirdre to her 6-week affair in South America? A squirrel next to a tiger. Did she really think I'd just swallow it? If so, she's not only unfaithful, she's stupid. If someone bumps into you on the street, do you shoot them? If this is Marcy's idea of balancing the scales, she's in for a shock. Later that afternoon, my son Kyle called. Hey, Dad, how are you? Hey, son, not bad. I'm catching up on work while your mom's away. How about you? Same old at school. How's Mom? I haven't heard from her. Marcy usually called the kids twice a week. Kyle didn't mind, but Rhonda thought it was overbearing, though she was hard to reach anyway. Don't worry, she's fine. She checked into her hotel and said they're traveling to some remote places with spotty reception. I hated lying to my kids, but I didn't want to tell them what was really happening. No matter how mad I was, I couldn't badmouth her to them. She was still their mom. Okay, Dad. Let me know if you hear from her. I'll send her a message, too. Take care, son, and don't miss the game on Saturday, I joked. No chance, Dad. Love you. Kyle laughed and hung up. I put the phone down, relieved. Kyle wouldn't call again for a few weeks, giving me time to plan. Rhonda, stationed on a warship, rarely called, so I didn't expect to hear from her for at least 3 weeks. Noticing the empty Jack Daniels bottle, I rummaged through the closet and found a bottle of Amarone della Valpolicella, 2003, saved for some unknown special occasion. I decided today, a celebration of my freedom after 24 years of marriage to a lying cheater, was that occasion. I poured a glass, then noticed our framed photo on the mantel. Damn you, I muttered, hurling the frame at the wall. I returned to my chair, cursing my situation. I'd sacrificed so much for my career, and this is where it got me. I'll call Deirdre tomorrow, I thought. My only regret in the Middle East was not taking things further with her. I saw the attacks as a sign to stop, but I should have taken it as a reminder that life is short. Raising my glass, I added, Marcy, you wanted revenge? I'll give you a real reason to hate me. I finished the bottle and went to bed, which was an improvement over the previous night. Thursday was slightly better, though I was still furious. I didn't clean up the broken glass and ended up stepping on a shard. I spent most of the day in my chair, lining up empty beer cans where her photo used to be. Later, Leslie knocked on the door. Just what I needed, more questions. I limped to the door, and her face fell when she saw me. Oh my God, Rick, you look awful. Maybe go home, Leslie. Leave me alone, I shouted, slamming the door. I waited for her to leave, then went back to my chair. The beer cans were better company. They didn't ask questions or try to set me up with someone. That night, I finally made a plan. I'd go to Marcy's hospital and talk to the president, showing him her letter. The hospital had a strict policy against employee relationships. If they didn't fire her and the doctor, I'd make sure they got sued. I wouldn't gain anything, but it would be sweet revenge. And before that, I'd call Deirdre. Marcy wasn't the only woman in the world. I could find someone else easily. I woke the next morning to my work phone ringing. It took a few seconds to process. It was 5 a.m. Who calls at 5 a.m.? Rick Weston. Bonjour, Rick. This is Laurent Dutchmain, Ministry of Security, Paris. Okay. My French is good, but at 5 a.m., and still feeling the effects of last night's alcohol, I wasn't ready for this. I knew Laurent a bit from past work between French and American intelligence. He was always direct and efficient. Bonjour, Laurent. What's the reason for the early call? Early? It's 8 a.m. here. I thought you were in Washington. No, I'm on the West Coast. It's 5 a.m. here. Oh, my mistake. Sorry, Rick. It's fine. What's going on? A complex situation involving multiple countries had come up, and my company was the main consulting partner. It was serious and needed immediate attention. 3 minutes into the call, I was fully awake. My professional focus kicked in. We spoke for nearly an hour, and by the time I hung up, I had a clear sense of how the next week would play out. My plans to call Deirdre and confront the hospital president would have to wait. After a long shower and a decent breakfast, I spent the day reading reports, calling colleagues in London, Washington, and Ottawa, and preparing for the coming days. I tried calling Deirdre, but it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. By 4:30 p.m., it was too late to go to the hospital, so I postponed it for the next week. I emailed my secretary, confirming I'd be in the office on Monday, finished up some work, and decided to go to a restaurant. Better to eat alone than stare at photos of my unfaithful wife. I had fish and chips. Maybe not the healthiest, but I stayed away from alcohol. That night, I went to bed early, exhausted from the week's stress. The next morning, I woke up feeling surprisingly refreshed. As my coffee brewed, the phone rang. "Hello, this is Rick." "Since when do you call and not leave a message?" teased a familiar voice. "Deirdre, wow, long time no see." I quickly filled her in on my awful week, and she was shocked. "Oh my God, Ricky, Marcy doesn't sound like the woman you described back in the Middle East." "No, she's changed, and I didn't see it in time." "Hey, why don't you come over tonight? I'll cook something better than whatever you've been eating all week," she offered. I learned she'd moved nearby recently and had a new house. Since it was a 90-minute drive, she suggested I bring what I needed to stay the night, which, honestly, had already been part of my plan. First, I needed to apologize to Leslie for being rude when she came by 2 days ago. Around noon, I walked across our backyards, and Leslie saw me before I even knocked, opening the door with a slight smile. "How are you, Rick?" she asked, her tone neutral. "Much better, thanks. Listen, I'm really sorry for how I treated you Thursday night. Too much beer on a bad day is never good. I apologize." Her face lit up. "Apology accepted, Rick. I'm glad to see you're feeling better." "Colonel, have time for a drink?" Vincent called as he walked down the stairs. "No, thanks. I've got other plans today. But if you're up for dinner sometime, our doors are always open," he added with a wink. Leslie blushed. "I know where you're going with this," I said. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted, but this isn't the right time. Spiting my wife like that isn't the answer, no matter what she said before she left." "I get it," Leslie said, disappointed. "But maybe we can talk over dinner sometime. I'm really curious about this lifestyle." "We'd be honored," Vincent grinned. I went home to finish preparing for the night. I debated bringing Marcy's letter, still lying on the kitchen floor. I didn't dare reread it, but decided to tuck it in my bag. It might come in handy as an excuse later. A few minutes later, I was on my way, feeling like a teenager on a first date. Deirdre Keel had always been a bit of a mystery, constantly traveling, always on missions, never at home for long. So I was surprised to see the beautiful 2-story house she had bought in a prestigious new area. When she saw me get out of the car, she practically ran to greet me. "So great to see you, Ricky." She kissed me warmly, and I hugged her. But right there in the driveway, as I held her, the floodgates opened. I broke down and cried like a child. "Come inside," Deirdre said softly. "We'll talk." We sat on her terrace, and she brought us homemade sangria, giving me time to calm down. "Okay, Ricky, you have my full attention. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the last few years, returning from the Middle East, my second career, and how Marcy became head nurse in neurosurgery. Then I talked about the months before Marcy left for Colombia and her affair with Trey, the doctor. Deirdre handed me a box of tissues as I spoke. She listened quietly, only asking a few questions for clarity. Finally, I handed her Marcy's letter. Deirdre read it carefully, trying not to react. "Oh, we're definitely playing soldiers," she said, slipping the letter back into the envelope before sitting in silence for a moment. Before I could ask, Deirdre spoke. "Rick, I swear I never told Marcy we slept together when I visited her. Yes, I remember what happened, and I'm not proud of it. I wouldn't brag about it either." "Then why did you visit her that day?" I asked. "I wanted to calm her down. She was worried sick, and I knew she wouldn't tell you. Honestly, Rick, you've always been great at strategy, but when it comes to emotions, you're clueless. You didn't do much to reassure her." "Thanks for the compliment," I replied sarcastically. "No, it's not that you don't understand emotions. You You just ignore them. You treat them like distractions. But life doesn't work that way. Deirdre was always blunt, never holding back. If you wanted the truth, she was the one to ask. As the sun set, she headed to the kitchen, and I followed with the empty glasses. I didn't want to admit it, but she was right. I had a lot to think about. Deirdre had prepped dinner, and I grilled the tuna steaks she'd been marinating all day. "So, what do you mean by late bloomer?" I asked as she set the table outside. "Marcy was essentially a single mom while you were away in Korea and the Middle East. She had a job, but her family came first. She only really started to blossom when you came home for good." "I get that, but why the betrayal? Revenge?" Deirdre thought for a moment. "Yes and no." "Explain." "Maybe it's revenge because she thinks we slept together in the Middle East." "Did you ever explain what really happened?" She didn't want to hear it. "Typical." "Did you keep trying?" I sighed. "No, not really." "There you go. She still thinks we had an affair, but honestly, I don't think that's the main issue." "So what else?" I asked, confused. "Well, it's more than just revenge. Marcy's career took off late in life, and now she's thriving. She's on this mission abroad, feeling powerful for the first time. Success can make people feel entitled, like they can take whatever they want. I think Marcy feels invincible, and she doesn't believe you'll ever leave her." I was taken aback. I hadn't noticed. "You've given me a lot to think about, Deirdre. Thanks." "Happy to help, but let's not forget those tuna steaks." Dinner was delicious, and the wine paired perfectly. The rest of the evening was light and fun, with Deirdre sharing her own stories. "Quite a big house for someone who's always on the go," I teased. "I'm not getting younger. Maybe it's time to settle down." "I can't picture you settling down," I joked. "You'd be surprised," she grinned. "Okay, what's his name?" "There are a few," she laughed. "There always are. But if I ever want a real relationship, I need a home base," she said, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. "The last few years have been tough, huh?" "Yeah, I live for work. Now I want to work and live. I know it sounds cliche, but that's where I'm at." Deirdre shared details of her last assignment in Afghanistan. She wasn't in a combat zone, but dealing with clueless people made the job exhausting. Her stories were fun to listen to, and her laughter was infectious. When it was time for bed, I went to the guest room, which was fine by me. I knew Deirdre had a soft spot for me, but I didn't think either of us wanted to cross that line, and the fantasy I'd had the past few days faded. The next morning, I woke up before her and checked my messages. Kyle was happy about his team's win, but there was nothing from Marcy. Deirdre came into the kitchen smiling, and I offered to make French pancakes. Despite her skepticism, I managed to make a decent batch, and we ate like an old couple, silently reading the papers. Finally, I asked, "Do you think Marcy and I are done?" She put down her paper, took a sip of coffee, and said, "I could be wrong, but I don't see a future for you two." Her bluntness caught me off guard, but that was Deirdre. Honest, no sugarcoating. "I appreciate your honesty," I said. She continued, "Marcy's disrespect for your marriage and what we did as soldiers shows she doesn't have feelings for you anymore. She didn't say goodbye before leaving, didn't write when she arrived. In her mind, you're already part of the past." I hugged Deirdre goodbye, thanked her, and promised to stay in touch. On the drive home, I kept thinking, what if only, maybe I should have. But I knew I couldn't go back. When I got home in the afternoon, I noticed the Nielsens weren't around, so I worked in the yard without interruptions. I wasn't sure if I was ready to return to the office the next day. That night, I couldn't sleep, struggling to accept that my marriage might be over. There had to be a solution, something I'd missed. I still had 5 weeks to figure it out. Monday was spent planning the week, and though I wasn't eager, it became clear I'd need to go to Ottawa by the end of the week. My assistant, Miss Matthews, respected my privacy despite her curiosity about my absence. I decided to update her on the situation, so we had lunch where I briefly explained the events. She was shocked but supportive, as always, without offering opinions. Talking about it helped me clear my thoughts. On the flight to Ottawa, I wondered how to save my marriage. Should I follow Marcy's requests to prove my loyalty? Would doing so win her back, or would it only earn more contempt? I also thought about Leslie. Having closeness with her just to spite Marcy seemed pointless. Leslie was attractive, but I'd never wanted a relationship with someone half my age. I was relieved I hadn't slept with Deirdre. It would have been revenge act, and I couldn't bear using her like that. I didn't want to do that to Leslie either. I respected my neighbor's lifestyle, but wasn't about to exploit it in my own hard times. That evening in the hotel room, I couldn't shake my thoughts. One unresolved issue was Josh. Should I tell him what I overheard on the phone? I wasn't sure. Josh wasn't a close friend, but I still felt he deserved to know, just as I'd want to be told. How would Josh react? Honestly, I had no idea. If I showed up at the Ambassador Hotel next month, as Marcy asked, would I find a wife eager to reconcile? Or someone ready to announce a divorce? Or maybe she wouldn't show up at all. As I prepared for my trip that week, I didn't have time to visit the hospital to discuss Marcy's affair with the president. But would it even matter if we were heading for divorce? Would confronting them stop her affair? And did I even want to stay married to someone who felt obligated to be with me? I spent a few days in Washington meeting with federal agents and Canadian colleagues. By the time I returned home, I was in the third week of Marcy's trip, still full of questions and unsure about the future. Sitting in my chair that Friday night, I couldn't understand why Marcy was so angry about what she thought happened between me and Deirdre in the Middle East, even though she had been unfaithful during my time in Korea. Clearly, her revenge wasn't complete. I needed answers. When Lydia had emailed me about Marcy's whereabouts, I thanked her, but didn't ask for more details. I got an explanation from the private investigator, but I never asked Lydia why Marcy was at the Red Roof Inn an hour before her shift. I didn't want to drag it out over email. I decided to visit Lydia the next day. I drove to her house, located in a middle-class neighborhood. After calling twice, a man around my age answered. "Yes?" he asked, looking at me with an intense gaze. "Good morning. I'm an old friend of Lydia's, just stopping by to say hello. Haven't seen her in years." After a long pause, he said, "No one told you?" "My wife died in a car accident 6 months ago." I was stunned. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said, offering my hand. "Thank you," he replied quietly. I left, still in shock, and stopped down the road to collect my thoughts. Though I hadn't seen Lydia in years, her death hit me hard. That was it. I wouldn't learn more about Marcy's actions. Later that day, I got a call. "Rick Weston." "Hey, Rick, it's Josh Washington." "Morning, Josh. How are you handling things?" "I was hoping we could talk about that. Meet me at O'Grady's in half an hour?" I arrived early and ordered a pint. The place was nearly empty, typical for a Sunday afternoon. Josh arrived shortly after, looking serious. I had a feeling I knew what he wanted to discuss. After some small talk, he got straight to the point. "Rick, Penny called me on Skype yesterday, and she was in tears. It took her a while to speak, but she finally admitted that the day after arriving in Bogota, she slept with one of the doctors, Dr. Evans." "Oh, okay. How did you react?" I asked, curious about his thoughts. "I stayed calm. I asked if it was just a fling or something more. She said it only happened once, and she regretted it the next day. She cried for 2 weeks and couldn't live with it anymore. I thanked her for being honest and told her we'd talk when she got back and that I wasn't mad. Honestly, I was surprised by how calm I was. So, what's your plan? Stay calm now and hand her divorce papers at the airport? No, I won't do that. I've had my own affairs, maybe 2 or 3, so getting mad at her would be hypocritical. That's why I asked you here for advice." "You're thinking of telling her about your affairs, right?" "Yeah, but I'm worried she'll be upset that I didn't tell her sooner." "It's possible, but you know Penny better than I do." Josh's face grew serious. "There's more. Penny said Marcy is also involved in something. Apparently, she's seeing Dr. Trey." I paused before answering. "Yeah, I know. Marcy's having a full-blown affair with him. She wrote me a letter about it before she left. It's her way of getting back at me for something she thinks happened in the Middle East." "Did you cheat?" Josh asked. "Remember, we kissed for 15 minutes in shock after a bomb went off near us. That's it. You're a firefighter. You understand that feeling. So, what now? Divorce seems like the logical step, but the idea of divorcing over a misunderstanding is eliminating me," I said, fighting back tears. Josh sighed, and we sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Penny told me about Trey weeks ago. All the women at the hospital are crazy about him. Marcy probably thinks she's lucky." "Yeah, maybe," I replied, annoyed. We continued our beers with dinner, and the conversation shifted, lightening the mood. The rest of the week was a blur of work, as government agencies kept pushing me to solve the latest crisis. In the evenings, I'd break down, overwhelmed by what my life had become. I knew I had to make a decision. One night, I carefully weighed my options. Option 1, meet Marcy at the Ambassador Hotel as she asked. Let her tell me how things are, and see if there's any chance to fix things. This option made me uncomfortable. It gave her all the power. She could even show up with Trey and tell me it was over. I felt like I'd been humiliated enough. Option 2, close all joint credit cards, open a new bank account in my name, transfer half of our joint funds, rent an apartment, move my things, and file for divorce. Then hand her the papers in the hotel lobby and let my lawyer handle the rest. It was a clean, straightforward option, and probably what most people would advise. But the thought of it brought tears to my eyes. It would be painful, but maybe the pain wouldn't last long. Option 3 was to send Marcy a message or email saying I wouldn't be meeting her at the Ambassador because I had filed for divorce, and she would be served there, but this wasn't ideal. Marcy might not check her messages, and even if she did, she'd likely try to contact me, and I didn't want a long-distance argument. Option 4 was to disappear without a trace. This would lead to divorce within a year, but I didn't like the idea of living in hiding. Not the life I wanted. Option 5 was a revenge tactic. The day before she returned, send copies of Marcy's letter to our children, parents, and friends, then leave for a 2-week vacation in the Caribbean. It was tempting, but not my style. I didn't want to expose our private issues or be seen as a victim. In the end, it wouldn't resolve anything, and I'd be left with the same problems. Unfortunately, option 6, where the last month never happened, was impossible. All 5 options seemed to lead to divorce. Filing for divorce felt inevitable, and I realized I needed to act. I knew a few lawyers and decided to make some calls. On Monday, I scheduled an appointment with attorney Doug Atwater, known for getting things done quickly. He came off as aggressive and a bit rude, and we clashed right away. I explained the situation and handed him Marcy's letter. "How long has she been gone?" he asked. "Almost 4 weeks," I replied. "3 weeks to realize divorce is the only option?" he said with a mix of surprise and contempt. "Yes," I answered. "What more proof do you need that she doesn't care about you?" His tone was meant to push me from sadness into action. I told him I wasn't concerned about material things. I just wanted it over quickly. I asked him to draft papers that Marcy wouldn't fight, so we could avoid dragging it out. He seemed reluctant, but agreed. Atwater said the documents would be ready by Friday. He'd send a copy to my office and arrange for Marcy to be served at the Ambassador Hotel 2 hours after her flight landed. The following week was one of the busiest of my career. I worked from 6 in the morning to 10 at night, spending days on the phone with Europe and evenings handling paperwork. Kyle texted a couple of times, mentioning his final exams were coming up. He'd be home in 4 weeks, 2 weeks after Marcy returned. I doubted the situation would be resolved by then. It was strange that Kyle hadn't heard from Marcy, but he assumed, based on what I'd told him about her schedule, that she wouldn't contact him before returning. Rhonda called just to check in, and like Kyle, she hadn't heard from Marcy either, which wasn't surprising given her workload. I came home exhausted every evening that week, and the guy from the takeout place nearby quickly became my best friend. I didn't have the energy to pack or look for an apartment, so that would have to wait. I also didn't meet with the hospital president. What was the point if Marcy and I were divorcing? I worked all day Saturday and spent Sunday doing chores and gardening. While watering the garden, I heard Vincent calling Leslie from inside. I walked over to say hello. Vincent greeted me with a big smile and asked how I was doing. "I'm feeling better, more at peace than 4 weeks ago," I replied. "Glad to hear it. Any news from Marcy?" he asked. "Not really. She's in places without much signal." "Hey, Vincent, can I take you up on that dinner offer?" "Of course. How about this Friday?" "I've got some steaks to grill," he said happily. "Perfect. See you Friday," I agreed. The next week was just as busy, leaving me no time to think. On Friday morning, a courier delivered my copies of the divorce papers. I treated the envelope like Marcy's letter, something I didn't want to open. It could wait. Then, just before lunch, everything changed. Laurent Dutchman called to say our situation in Europe was getting worse. I called my colleagues and realized I'd have to go to Europe for at least 10 days, meaning I wouldn't be home when Marcy returned the following Friday. This ruled out option 1 since I had never seriously considered options 3, 4, or 5. My only choice was option 2, but I wouldn't be there to discuss it with her. She'd have to figure things out herself, just as I had been left to do for the past 5 weeks. On my way home, I bought a couple of bottles of wine, took a quick shower, and headed to the Nielsen's. Leslie greeted me warmly, and thankfully, there were no sexual undertones this time. Vincent couldn't stop praising the new butcher shop where he'd found the steaks. Dinner was great, the food was excellent, and the company was enjoyable. I shared more details about Marcy's letter, but didn't mention filing for divorce. Maybe it was my way of letting Marcy explain the chaos she caused. After dinner, we cleared the table and sat on the terrace with glasses of port. With the wine flowing, I decided to ask something that had been on my mind. So, I'm curious, how did you two start sharing Leslie with other men? They were surprised, but Vincent quickly recovered. It started as a fantasy. Years ago, we were watching a documentary about unusual sexual practices, and Leslie seemed especially interested when they talked about partner swapping. After the show, I teased her, and she admitted it had been a long-time fantasy of hers. That intrigued me too, and after nearly a year of talking, we decided to try it. Do you both swap partners, or is it just Leslie with other men? Do you also sleep with other women? Sometimes, but it's not my main fantasy. We started by dating other couples, but I realized I get the most pleasure from watching Leslie with other men. I've been with other women, but none of them gave me the same thrill as Leslie. He leaned in and whispered, "Leslie is amazing in bed. Her body is perfect, and her energy is like a nuclear bomb." Leslie blushed. "So there's no real incentive for you to sleep with other women?" I asked. "No," Vincent said. "It happens sometimes, but it's becoming less frequent." "Do you ever feel jealous watching Leslie with other men?" I asked. "No, not at all," Vincent replied. "Leslie never meets them in secret. Everything is open, and afterward we make love and talk about it, sometimes even laughing." "So you both see it as a shared experience, without feeling forced or left out?" "Exactly," Vincent confirmed. "You got it." "Do you view this as a hobby, separate from your marriage vows?" I asked. "Yes," Leslie chimed in. "Love is love, and Zex is Zex. I've never broken my vows because Vincent and I agree on what we do with our bodies." "It's normal after years of marriage to wonder what it's like with others," Vincent added. "What were my choices? Cheat on Leslie or explore this with her?" The second option was full of possibilities. I nodded. "I'm intrigued, but I don't think I could ever watch Marcy with another man. Knowing it happened is bad enough, but seeing it would be unbearable." Vincent gave me a sympathetic look. "Your situation is different, Rick. Marcy did it behind your back and gave you a free pass afterward, hoping that would make up for it. But she didn't have the open, honest conversation that's crucial." Leslie added, "I don't think she did it because she doesn't love you anymore, Rick. She probably just wanted to explore something new, but she handled it badly." "Exactly," Vincent agreed. "She didn't get your consent, and that's the key difference." After a long hug with both of them, I headed home. It had been a surprising and eye-opening conversation, and to my surprise, I saw some logic in their lifestyle. My flight to London was set for Tuesday, and I still had plenty to do. I wanted the house in perfect shape when Marcy returned, not to impress her, but for my own sense of pride. I cleaned everything except for a photo frame I had thrown against the wall, which had been lying broken for weeks. It felt like a symbol. On Monday evening, I made a gin and tonic to mark what could be my last night in the house. With my bags packed and everything in order, I sat down, expecting to feel at peace after all the decisions I had made. But something still felt off. I walked into the kitchen and saw the large envelope with the divorce papers, which I still hadn't opened. I sat down and skimmed through them. Everything was in order as I requested, and I doubted Marcy would argue. 24 years of marriage, reduced to paperwork. I sat there deep in thought when it hit me. Marcy's letter. Where was it? I found it in my bag from the trip to Deirdre's. I hadn't reread it since the night Marcy left. I sat down and read it again. And then again. Suddenly things became clearer. Sometimes things aren't as complicated as they seem. "Hello, this is Doug Atwater." "Hi, Doug, it's Rick Weston. Sorry to call so late, but this can't wait." "It's fine, Rick. How can I help?" "I want you to stop the divorce. Don't serve my wife the papers this Friday." "Rick, that's unexpected. I thought we agreed this was the only solution," Doug replied. "Doug, I'm leaving for Europe tomorrow and we'll be back next week. I think the divorce is a hasty decision, and I don't want to rush it." "Rick, this sounds like denial. Don't you think your wife has shown enough disrespect?" "Doug, stop. You're my lawyer, not my therapist. I have my reasons. Will you pause the case?" After a deep sigh, Doug Atwater agreed to pause the divorce process and wait for my further instructions. I sat at the table in my home office and began writing a long letter. I rewrote it several times, wanting my thoughts to be perfectly clear. Well past midnight, I finally finished. On my way to the airport Tuesday morning, I stopped by the courier service I used for work and sent the letter, with specific instructions to deliver it to Mrs. Marcy Weston at the Ambassador Hotel on Friday. By 4 p.m., Marcy realized she had been rereading the same line for 10 minutes and admitted she wasn't in the mood to read. Fatigue from the trip made her sleep almost the entire flight from Asunción to Bogotá, but the chaotic Bogotá airport where she was catching a connecting flight to the U.S., left her unsettled. She couldn't sleep now, unlike Penny Washington, who was peacefully napping next to her. Penny's journey had been tumultuous. She shared Marcy's excitement upon arriving in Bogota and ended up sleeping with Dr. Mark Evans, known for his reputation at the hospital. However, after Rick's call to Marcy, Penny was consumed by guilt. When she finally confessed to her husband, Josh, over the phone, his calm reaction brought her immense relief. Josh even admitted to past affairs, which initially infuriated Penny, but eventually settled their relationship. She now looked forward to going home to her husband. Marcy's thoughts, however, were more conflicted. She signed up for this trip to prove to herself that she was more than just Rick Weston's wife. She needed to do something on her own, away from the constant presence of her husband, children, parents, and friends. But as the trip went on, guilt for not contacting her family grew stronger. She had wanted to call Rick many times, but held back, determined to follow through with her need for space. She wanted Rick to feel her absence, but she also feared what might happen while she was gone. Marcy wondered if Rick had taken advantage of her absence to visit their son, watch some baseball, or enjoy time with friends. Or worse, had he slept with Leslie? Leslie, maybe allowing him to sleep with her had been a mistake. How would Rick feel after weeks of sex with their young, athletic neighbor? Would he still find Marcy attractive? And what if he wanted to continue seeing Leslie? Despite her doubts, Marcy missed Rick terribly. She fantasized about candlelit dinners and hoped Rick missed her too, at least a little. These thoughts weighed on her mind as the plane flew over the Gulf of Mexico. After landing and clearing customs, Marcy was relieved Rick wasn't waiting nervously by the baggage carousel. She half expected him to be there, but Rick wasn't one to follow orders without military rank. Saying goodbye to Penny and the rest of the group, she drove to the Ambassador Hotel. Rick was nowhere in sight when she entered the hotel lobby. Following instructions to the letter for the first time in his life, she thought with a chuckle. Within 5 minutes of entering her room, she was in the shower, letting the warm water wash away the fatigue. Still wrapped in a towel, she heard a knock on the door. "Rick Weston, you will never change," Marcy muttered with a smirk. But instead of Rick, a young woman stood at the door. "Are you Marcy Weston?" the woman asked. Marcy's face went pale. "Yes, that's me," she replied, barely able to speak. "This letter is for you. Have a nice day." Marcy took the letter with trembling hands. Closing the door, she sat on the bed, took a few deep breaths to calm down, and opened the letter. "Dear Marcy, as you've probably noticed, I've respected your need for space and haven't tried to contact you during your trip. It hasn't been easy. These last 6 weeks have been some of the most painful of my life. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm not angry and I don't want to make you feel guilty. In fact, I'm grateful for the letter you left before you went. It helped me understand things I hadn't noticed for years. When I first read it, my gut reaction was to fly to Bogota, punch your Dr. Trey in the face, and drag you home. Thankfully, 6 weeks is a long time, long enough to think things through. I would have liked to talk at least once a week, but I respected your rules. Now, I've come to my own conclusions, which might differ from yours. First, let's talk about something that's clearly been bothering you, whether Deirdre and I had sex in the Middle East. The short answer is, in a way, yes. Was it intentional? Number after the ambush, while we were both in shock, Deirdre and I kissed in an empty office. I didn't stop her, and I kissed her back. But it didn't go further because sirens went off, and we had to evacuate. Why did it happen? Surviving a near-death experience can make you act impulsively, as if you're living on borrowed time. It wasn't about romance or promises, but about living in the moment, not knowing if tomorrow would come. That's what happened in the Middle East. There was nothing planned, and it never happened again. After you left, I visited Deirdre, and I stayed the night, not with her, but in her guest room. She helped me make sense of my life, but there's nothing romantic between us. I'm not in love with her, but she's a good friend. Next, I want to talk about the 6 months I spent deployed in Korea. When we met in Hawaii, you said I was complacent and distant. You were right. I wasn't sharing my thoughts with you, and that was my mistake. I should have opened up instead of acting like an idiot. A few days before you arrived in Hawaii, I received a letter from my ex, Lydia Steele. She mentioned seeing your car parked at the Red Roof Inn every morning before your shift. At first, I thought you might have been having an affair while I was in Korea again. Later, I learned the hospital parking lot was under construction, and employees had to park elsewhere. Red Roof Inn was a convenient option, but I still don't understand why you arrived so early. Lydia died in a car accident a few months ago, so I'll never get her perspective. I'm hoping you'll explain it. Finally, let's address the topic of Leslie. I understand you wanted me to have love with her. Well, I didn't, and here's why. First, I'm 48 and she's 30. You know I've always preferred women closer to my age. Leslie is attractive, but she's too young for me. Second, it would have been revenge act, and that's not how I view sex. For me, it's about pleasure, not payback. Last Friday, I had dinner with Leslie and Vincent. We had great steaks, some port, and a lot of conversation, including partner swapping, but it was just talk. Now let's move on to your trip and the content of your letter. This may surprise you, Marcy, but if you had told me you felt the need to sleep with someone else, I would have been open to a frank conversation about it over a bottle of wine. I would have shared my feelings and fantasies, and maybe we could have explored something new together. But you chose a different path. You left without saying goodbye, didn't let me know you'd arrived safely, and left me a letter 2 days later, essentially saying you wanted to cut me out of your life for 6 weeks to live your own and enjoy a romance. You arranged for me to sleep with our neighbor to ease your own guilt. And the subtle jabs about my career and playing soldier? They hurt, Marcy, and they still hurt. It took your trip and affair for me to fully understand how angry you've been at me for all the time I was away. I keep wondering how we ended up here. 3 things come to mind. First, I think you resent me for having a successful career while you were left to raise the family. You managed the kids, the house, the bills, and everything else, which left you with neither the energy nor the opportunity to pursue your own career. Second, when I retired, you finally got the chance to focus on your career, and now you're recognized as the best nurse at the hospital. It gave you new wings, and you felt like you deserved the freedom to fly wherever you wanted after being held back for so long. I get that. I would have felt the same way. I would have been happy to talk to you about it, maybe even celebrate with you, but you were too angry with me to share that. Third, and perhaps the biggest reason we're in this mess, is that over the years, we've done a terrible job of communicating. Marcy, I've always been grateful for everything you've done for me and our family, but my mistake was telling everyone except you. I've been so proud of your success, but again, I told others, and not you. If you had shared your feelings with me and I'd listened, things could have been so different. I'm afraid it might be too late now, Marcy. We may have grown too far apart to fix things. That's why I contacted a lawyer and prepared divorce papers, which I was going to give you today. But your letter gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe there's still something left to save. So I've decided not to let things fall apart without opening the door to an honest conversation. By now, you've likely guessed that I won't be meeting you in the lobby today. There are 2 reasons for that. First, I'm a coward. When you told me that Dr. Trey was just a fling, that you didn't love him, I believed you. But how do things stand now after living with him for 6 weeks? Have you fallen in love with him? Maybe he's sitting next to you right now as you read this letter. I can't face the possibility of meeting you in the lobby and being told we're over, that you're now with him. That's more than I can handle right now. The second reason I won't meet you today is logistical. I'm in Paris. Yes, I'm still traveling. Security issues related to international affairs. I flew out last Tuesday, had a layover in London, and arrived in Paris today. I'll be back next Thursday. My flight schedule is in the envelope. When I return, I suggest we meet at the Ambassador Hotel, just as you wanted to today. If you show up, I'll know 3 things. First, you still want to be my wife. Second, your affair with Trey is over. And third, you're ready to take the lessons from the past and make our marriage better. Don't come if any of these is missing. Also, please don't try to contact me before then. I want your decision to meet me to come from your own thoughts. If you don't show up within 2 hours of my arrival, I'll know and accept that it's over. I won't be angry or resentful. I'll just cry a little more and then try to move on. Whatever happens, Marcy, I want to apologize for everything I did that may have contributed to this sad situation. I remember the last thing you wrote in your letter and what you said on the phone, that you love me. I love you too, Marcy. Crazy. And I'm holding on to it. With love, Rick. Marcy lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling for several minutes before she could gather her thoughts. Oh my God, I definitely didn't expect this, she said aloud, tears streaming down her face. She had always believed she loved Rick more than he loved her. In her mind, she was just one part of Rick's life, with his career always coming first. She felt like he resented her for making him stop flying. Their life had been normal. Not perfect, but normal, like many couples. She never imagined Rick would do such deep soul-searching about their marriage. She thought her trip would be a wake-up call for him, nothing more. She joked in her letter that Rick might want a divorce, but she never truly believed he'd seriously consider it. Unless he's joking, she thought. But no, that's not like him. She couldn't believe Rick was so deeply affected by her actions, or that these 6 weeks had been such torment for him. She ordered dinner and a bottle of red wine for her room. Rick wasn't coming, but she wasn't ready to return to their empty house just yet. I've always hated flying to and from Europe. 11 hours crammed in a plane is pure torture for the nerves and back. I was irritated as we finally landed after a chaotic flight, but relieved that we'd fixed the information leak in Europe before it gained public attention. Now, I could finally focus on the most pressing issue. Marcy. Apart from not meeting her at the hotel last Friday, I had followed her requests. I even took disease tests in London last week. I chuckled to myself, thinking about the irony of sitting in a London clinic after not having love with anyone since Marcy left. The nurse was losing patience as she struggled to find a vein in my arm. As I drove to the hotel after landing, I realized I hadn't worked out a plan B if Marcy didn't show up. My nerves kicked in as I took the elevator from the parking lot to the main lobby. I was right on time, and there were no messages from her saying she'd be late. The lobby was nearly empty, except for a woman sitting anxiously by the door. "Hi, Marcy," I said softly from behind. She jumped up and threw herself into my arms. "Rick, God, I missed you so much," she said, sobbing. We hugged for almost a minute before I gently pulled back and smiled at her. "Rick, I'm so sorry for everything," she said, taking my face in her hands. I kissed her forehead. "Shall we rent a room, beautiful?" I asked with a wink. We got a room, ordered lunch and wine. Half an hour later, once we were in the room, I asked Marcy to wait while I took a quick shower to freshen up after the long flight. "Sorry for the delay, but I needed it," I said. "Yes, it was necessary," Marcy replied with a teasing laugh. She waited with a glass of Pinot Noir and a piece of paper. I eyed her cautiously. "This is my clean bill of health," she said, grinning. I laughed and showed her mine. "Marcy, can you confirm that Dr. Trey is no longer part of the picture?" I asked, haunted by uncertainty for the past 7 weeks. "Trey?" Marcy almost laughed. "Rick, I ended things with Trey the same night you called me in Bogota. After we hung up, we continued what we were doing, but he started bragging and insulting you. I didn't like it. I stopped, looked at him, got my things, and went to my room. He barely spoke to me for the rest of the trip. Things were icy, even in the operating rooms. Marcy, I've spent 7 weeks worrying that you'd fall in love with him, and that the two of you would come back here together," I admitted. "Rick, that was never going to happen. Your call that night made me realize what a jerk he was, and I wasn't the only one. He alienated the entire group within 2 weeks." I took Marcy's hands. "Marcy, you have no idea how happy I am to be sitting here with you today," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "Rick, my love, we've been living in 2 different worlds these past 2 months. It's time for us to reconnect." We talked for hours, leaving nothing out. Marcy had come to terms with what happened between me and Deirdre in the Middle East. She admitted she felt awful for planning her affair in response to something so minor. She also explained why she had been going to the Red Roof Inn parking lot. While I was in Korea, her friend and colleague Carlota Jimenez was hiding her sister, Juanita, who had entered the U.S. illegally. Carlota couldn't hide Juanita at home because her husband was abusive, so she got her a job at the Red Roof Inn through Lydia, the hotel manager and a friend of hers. Marcy visited Juanita in the morning, while Carlota saw her in the evening. Interestingly, Marcy didn't even know Lydia was the manager, and Lydia never got involved with Juanita. Carlota and Marcy had many conversations about the problems in our relationship, discussing the misunderstandings that had nearly led us to divorce. For the first time in years, Marcy and I calmly and constructively talked through everything. I felt she was completely honest, and I didn't hold anything back either. That night, our intimacy felt like a second first time. It was probably the most meaningful moment we had ever shared. "I have a gift for you before we go to bed," Marcy said with a mysterious smile, handing me a gift bag. Inside was the photo of us that she had picked up from the living room floor and put in a new frame. "Thank you, Marcy," I said softly, smiling. "Look at the back," she urged. "It says Made in China," I joked. "No, not that label, smart guy," she laughed. There was a small tag that said, "Unbreakable." My love for her had survived. My faith in her was restored. As Winston Churchill once said, "Never waste a good crisis." Marcy and I had learned valuable lessons from this difficult time. We learned how to communicate our fears, doubts, gratitude, appreciation, and even our fantasies. I'm happier than ever, and judging by the bright smile I see on her face every morning, I know Marcy is too. Our children never found out how close we came to divorce, which is a relief. Penny and Josh Washington were also able to fix their relationship and have become our closest friends. As for Dr. Trey Cardoza, he wasn't promoted to surgical team leader due to behavioral issues and left the hospital 2 months after the Doctors Without Borders mission. No one missed him. A few weeks after Marcy returned from South America, Deirdre started dating someone. At first, she was skeptical about Marcy and me rekindling our relationship, but over time, she came around. Now she visits us for the weekend, and surprisingly, Marcy not only accepts it, she was the one who invited her. Leslie and Vincent Nielsen moved to the Midwest after Vincent got a job transfer. We still keep in touch through calls and messages. Jenny Harshley and Chuck Marston are now a couple, thanks to the little stunt I pulled at the Goldsteins. Marcy called Leslie in Chicago to tell her, and they laughed for about 10 minutes on the phone. Doug Atwater nearly lost it when I told him to toss the divorce papers. He called me a weakling, an idiot, and a few other choice names. I threatened to file a complaint with the Bar Association, and that shut him down quickly. Marcy was promoted to head nurse for the entire hospital. She has a better schedule and a much higher salary, and she's glowing with happiness. I'm still handling tough tasks at work, but I've returned to my first love, flying. With Marcy's blessing, I bought a Cessna 162, an impulse buy, but one I'm thrilled about. After reflecting on everything, I've come to realize that life often presents us with unexpected challenges, but these challenges can also become opportunities for growth. Marcy and I went through some of the hardest times in our marriage, but through open communication and a willingness to confront our pain, we found a way to reconnect. It wasn't an easy road. There were moments when I thought it was over, but sometimes the hardest paths lead to the strongest bonds. Our marriage is far from perfect, but it's real and it's ours. We've learned to communicate better, to listen without judgment, and to share our dreams and fears without reservation. The crisis we faced, instead of tearing us apart, brought us closer than ever before. I've also come to understand that relationships require constant effort. It's easy to take things for granted, to assume that everything will remain the same. But life doesn't work that way. People change, situations evolve, and if you don't adapt, you can lose sight of what truly matters. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lessons learned, for the mistakes we made, and for the love that, despite everything, never truly faded. Marcy and I have a second chance now, and we're determined to make the most of it. It's not about forgetting the past, but about learning from it and building a future that's even stronger. As I sit here now watching the sunset, I'm filled with hope. Hope for us, for our family, and for the life we've rebuilt together. Marcy's smile reminds me that we can survive anything, as long as we're willing to fight for each other. Life may not always be easy, but with her by my side, I know we can face whatever comes next.